You saw it. We saw it. We will get into what we all saw together. There has never been a better time to join us as we fight the left and build the future. Join now at dailywire.com/subscribe with code Trump for 47% off. What other code could we possibly use? Trump won. We won. We won everything. The White House, the Senate, most likely the House, the Supreme Court. Ballot propositions, we won. President Trump promised us in 2016 that we would win. He promised us that we would win so much that we would get sick and tired of winning. And I am a little tired from winning because basically no one in this building slept last night. But no one here, and none of you, I am sure, is sick of winning because this historic victory, the greatest political comeback in American history, has only just begun. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Who to blame? The liberal media are all trying to figure out who to blame. Do they blame you, the garbage people? The people they consider to be absolute trash? Do they blame Biden? Some of the networks are blaming Biden. Do they blame Kamala? One of the networks is blaming Kamala. We'll get into the blame game, and we'll get into exactly where things stand now. First, though, I want to tell you about Birch Gold. A conservative presidency will not be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. You can protect your savings by diversifying now into gold from our friends at Birch Gold. That is right. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheaval, and global strife. It can protect you now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. The best news is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of the U.S. dollar has declined. The price of gold has increased 40%. Is that a coincidence? I think not. I have had gold as a significant chunk of my portfolio for a little while. And these days, I'll tell you what, I'm pretty glad about that. Text Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold. Then diversify. As a gold partner of the Daily Wire for the past 8 years, you can trust Birch Gold, as I do, to protect your savings. Text Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, to 989898 today. What happened? Where are we at? I'm having deja vu all over again because I was in this chair until about 2:30 last night. Then I go home and I write my show. How am I going to write my show? We've all been talking for the past 8 hours. Well, that was when I got to delectate on the reactions from the libs, which we'll get to momentarily. But I'm writing the show until about, 4:30 in the morning. Then I go to bed about 4:40, and I wake up about 2 hours later or something, and I come in here. Not a ton has changed, but we can't say with certainty what the final results will be because all sorts of ballots are going to keep coming in certain places in the Rust Belt over the next few days. So we can't say with certainty what the total final tally is. However, the New York Times prediction, as of the wee small hours, was that Trump would get 312 electoral college votes. Kamala would get 226. So we were told going into the election, it was a nail biter. It was going to be close. And in certain places it was close within the individual states, but all those close races broke for Trump. Broke for the Republicans. So the Electoral College vote wasn't all that close. The Electoral College vote was a landslide. It was a bloodbath, actually. No question whatsoever. Now, that would still give the libs the opportunity to whine and complain, as Chris Hayes on MSNBC attempted to do in the usual liberal way when those numbers came in.
We have this very funky and terrible system called the Electoral College, which decides elections in a way that's totally different than every other election in the United States decided and the way that anything's decided anywhere else in the world. We should scrap it.
So we have this really terrible, awful system called the Electoral College, and the Electoral College is evil and awful and terrible, and it's totally different from any other election in America. First of all, yeah, duh, because you're talking about the difference between state elections and then the national elections that pertain to the United States of America. So obviously those are going to be conducted differently. It's really funky and weird. Yeah, well, it's been our system for all of American history, and it served us pretty well as we've become the most powerful and prosperous country in the world. So I don't know, maybe I wouldn't throw out the genius of our founding fathers and the framers of our Constitution for the whining and musing of Chris Hayes on MSNBC. But even put all that aside for a second, the libs can't blame the Electoral College. Because not only is Trump projected to win 312 to 226 in the Electoral College, Trump won the popular vote. The libs are so used to reflexively knocking the Electoral College and demanding, purely out of opportunism, not based on anything in our Constitution or in our political history of 2 centuries plus. They say, well, actually, the election should be decided by the popular vote. They only say that because in the past 20 years, they've won the popular vote on a number of occasions. The only time in this millennium that the Republicans have won the popular vote was in 2004, Bush's reelection, until last night, when Trump decisively won the popular vote. New York Times projecting that Trump will win the popular vote by 1.4%. So what is Chris Hayes whining about? We have this crazy, funky system. It's really awful and archaic. I mean, it was the system given to us by our framers of our Constitution, who were much wiser statesmen than anybody on my side. But actually, we need to scrap the whole thing and have the election decided by California and New York. Well, guess what, bro? Even if you did that, even with the way the campaign was conducted, Trump still would have won. You know, there is something called the Popular Vote Compact, and it's this experimental agreement that certain liberal states are signing on to say, okay, no matter how the vote goes in our state, we will give our electors to whoever wins the national popular vote. And this agreement is of dubious constitutionality, so it's not really in effect. But man, if that were in effect now, it would have been even more of a slaughter in the Electoral College. You know, Trump would have won basically all of the votes. So the libs can't blame it on the Electoral College. By the way, had Trump campaigned for the popular vote, had he campaigned even more in New York, had he campaigned even more in California, say, or someplace like that, then it would have been even more of a landslide in the popular vote totals. This is a vindication, though. It's a vindication of Donald Trump. It's a vindication of so much. It's a vindication of Trump's decision to campaign at MSG, for instance. I went to the MSG rally. I was very excited to go to the Madison Square Garden rally. A lot of people said, what's Trump doing campaigning in New York? And I was asking some Republican muckety-mucks about this, and the answer was, he wants a big show, he wants a big final statement, this iconic venue, Madison Square Garden, but also he wants the popular vote. That's why he's spending time in blue places. And I thought, wow, he thinks he's got the Electoral College locked up. He's playing for the popular vote. It's in a way, it's vanity, but no, it has a political payoff, which is the libs can't even try to delegitimize his election the way they did in 2016, the way they've tried to do to Republicans. That's off the table. This is a vindication of Trump's specific decisions to hold rallies in places like MSG. It is a vindication of Trump, the candidate. Trump put together a coalition that other Republicans could not. Mitt Romney could not do that. John McCain could not do that. George Bush did match Trump on the Hispanic vote, but George Bush could not put together the coalition of supporters that Trump did. That means that's a vindication of Trump, the candidate, and it is a vindication of longtime Trump supporters. I'm very happy for all the people who didn't vote for Trump in 16 or 20 and did vote for him in 2024. Thank you to all of you people who helped deliver this election. I am even thankful to people who didn't vote for Trump in 16 and did vote for him in 20 and 2024. Thank you to you guys. That was a crazy election, but good that you came around. Some of us, however, are longtime Trump supporters who supported him in 16, 20, and 24. Even back in 16, when we heard that Trump is a terribly flawed candidate, we would have been so much better off had we picked one of the other candidates in the primaries. He created all these liabilities and vulnerabilities and challenges for Republicans that were needless and pointless and stupid. Oh, that dastardly Trump, he's got good policies, but he should keep his mouth shut. Oh, that Trump, he's turning off voters. Oh, that any other Republican would play better. No, I don't want to hear it. That argument's over. Trump not only crushed that woman in the Electoral College, he won the popular vote. Donald Trump is a better candidate than the other Republicans. I don't want to hear this anymore. Oh, if only we'd run a better Republican. He's the man, guys. He's the man. You can't dispute it anymore. The popular vote win, as a technical matter or a legal matter, doesn't matter at all. It's just a number that the libs have pointed to delegitimize Republican electoral victories. But as a practical matter, it means a lot because it shuts up the critics on the left and it shuts up the critics on the right. Trump was an historically good candidate. He put together an historic alliance. The people who have supported him, especially the people who have supported him for a long time, were vindicated in their support. The victory last night played on so many levels. It augured great things internationally, nationally, domestically, but even at these deeper levels, he showed us what a winning coalition for a Republican looks like. Other Republicans probably not picking up that Elon Musk endorsement, that Bobby Kennedy endorsement, that Tulsi Gabbard endorsement. Probably not picking up those union workers, probably not picking up huge numbers of black men and Hispanics and all of the demos that we will get into momentarily. But for now at least, let's put it to rest. Oh, those populist Republicans who forced Donald Trump on us in 2016 over all the better candidate. No, man. Donald Trump, he did it. He got the job done. He did something that no other president in our lifetime, certainly not in our lifetime, no other president in American history had done, other than Grover Cleveland, which is to win a non-consecutive second term. And he did it in a more astounding way, overcoming more legal hurdles, being nearly assassinated twice, and putting together an impressive coalition that bodes well for Republicans for years, potentially decades to come. Now, I want to tell you about First Liberty Institute. There is a looming threat to our constitutional republic that the mainstream media won't cover. The radical left is plotting a Supreme Court coup. They're not even trying to hide it. These progressive ideologues want to eliminate the court's conservative majority by packing it with their own handpicked justices. This is not court reform. This is a blatant power grab. Well, we've seen that playbook. Made-up ethical issues, attacks on the justices, illegal protests at their homes, open threats from so-called representatives. This is Venezuela-style court packing would spell the end of judicial independence and the rule of law as we know it. There is hope. There's a lot of hope because of the election last night. First Liberty also is leading the charge to protect the Supreme Court from this radical plan. They're fighting to preserve the legitimacy of the court and the separation of powers that safeguards our freedoms. We got a little breather here because of the election, but in the long run, what the left wants to do is undermine our system of government. Do not let them Venezuela your United States. Go to supremecoup.com/Knowles, supremecoup.com/Knowles to learn how you can help stop the left's takeover of the Supreme Court. Future of our country is in your hands. supremecoup.com/Knowles, Knowles, today. What about the demographic numbers? I just mentioned Trump put together a coalition of Hispanic voters, of black men, of union workers, of people that of Arabs, of Muslims, of people that you don't associate usually, of Jews in New York, of people you don't associate with Republicans. CNN was as shocked, if not more shocked, as anybody.
We wanted to look across all three blue wall states that John was just walking us through, looking at this slice of the vote, the Latino vote in the blue wall states. Now, they only make up 6% of the electorate in each of these states, but look at the difference in the margin. So Harris is getting in Pennsylvania 58% of the Latino vote, again, 6% of the electorate, to Donald Trump's 41%. That's a 17-point advantage. But 4 years ago, Biden beat Trump with Latinos in Pennsylvania by 42 points. So that is a huge movement for Trump in narrowing that gap. Similar story in Michigan. You see the Latino vote makes up a 6% of the share. Not a similar story, reverse. Donald Trump is winning the Latino vote in Michigan with 60% of the vote. Harris, 35% of the vote. That's a 25% advantage for Trump among Latinos. That is a big change when Biden won Latinos in Michigan by 11 points 4 years ago. That's a 36-point swing in the margin.
36-point swing. These are huge numbers. And you see CNN here. I mean, this analyst he's kind of tickled by it, I think. It's just so shocking. In terms of Republicans with Hispanics, we have not seen these numbers since the Bush reelect in 2004. In terms of any of these other demographics, black voters, black men specifically, or Arabs or Muslims, more prominent in more important states now than they have been in the past. Union voters, you go down the list. We are seeing a real realignment. So this is a big takeaway for the pundit class and the chattering class and the academics and the intellectuals. We've heard a lot about a political realignment in our country, certainly since Trump 16, but even before that, some calls for a political realignment. And it never quite materializes. We're always waiting for those Hispanic voters to come over. Ronald Reagan said the Hispanics are conservative. They just don't know it yet. Well, and that was 40 years ago, and it hadn't happened for a long time. We are now seeing a path to that maybe happening. At the very least, a path to Hispanic assimilation. Obviously, many Hispanics have assimilated into America, but an electoral assimilation with this mass migration, that didn't look all that likely. One way you can tell that a group has assimilated is when you can't look at them and know exactly who they're going to vote for. The Italians, my people on my mother's side, are a good example of this. You have Scalia and you got Nancy Pelosi. They're both Italian. They're on very different ends of the political spectrum. You cannot look at an Italian in America and know who he's going to vote for. Broadly speaking, you can look at an Hispanic in America and know who he's going to vote for. At least if you know the nationality. If you know Cuban, you say, okay, maybe Republican. Venezuelan or Mexican or Guatemalan, more likely Democrat. But now I don't know. We're going to have to dig into some of these numbers. Obviously, some of them are still coming in. But this is a good sign for assimilation of Hispanics, and it's just a good sign for Republicans playing well with Hispanics, playing very well with black male voters. We don't have really strong numbers yet, but we're seeing some exit polls saying 20% plus of black male voters voting for Donald Trump. That's it. We have said for years, if the Republicans can pull 20% of the black vote, even the black male vote, that's it. The Democrats are toast. They're going to get blown away. And that's exactly what happened last night. The realignment is real. So who are they going to blame? Who are the libs going to blame? NBC has had a black man on who did not vote for Donald Trump. This was from PBS, actually. Jonathan Capehart, this bum on PBS. We'll get to NBC and CNN in a moment. Capehart went right to the heart of the matter. He actually gave, I think, the most sincere answer on who to blame. It's a bonkers answer, but I think it actually speaks to what the libs really believe in their heart of hearts. He placed the blame not on Kamala, not on Biden, not on Trump, but on the American people.
I can't help but wonder if the American people have given up on democracy simply because of what he's told us, what he wants to do, simply because of what the Supreme Court decided in terms of immunity. I mean, he has said he wants to go after his political enemies. I am your retribution. So if indeed what Fox is reporting, if that ends up being true and ends up being the case, then this conversation about who we are as a country, I was going to say will pop off in earnest, but I think we will have an answer, especially because I'm looking over your shoulder. Right now Donald Trump has 51.2% of total votes. 51.2.
51.2 of total votes. What did he say at the top? He said, have the American people given up on democracy? What does the word democracy mean in that analysis? It can't mean democracy. Even had Trump lost the popular vote, but won the Electoral College vote, then the libs could twist themselves into pretzels to say, well, actually, this is proof that the American system is not truly democratic. Trump's victory is not democratic. But democracy just means what most people want. It's just the expression of what most people want. And in this case, according to our actual electoral system, most people want Trump. And even just in the most literal way you can take most people, the majority of the population, most people want Trump. So it is nonsensical to say that the American people opposed democracy last night. What he means by democracy, and I'm not the first to observe this, is liberalism. And the American people did reject liberalism. They at the very least rejected radical leftism last night. But what Capehart says here is, no, they rejected democracy, because they conflate these terms, democracy and liberalism and constitutionalism and all the rest. And his evidence of that was Trump has called for retribution, and most people voted for retribution. Yes, retribution can be a good thing. There is a type of vengeance politically that is a good thing. That's actually a virtue. St. Thomas Aquinas writes about this. Vengeance or retribution in this way can be a good thing. It can be a virtue when it is a mean, when it mediates between two extremes. One extreme is cruelty. We don't want to be excessive in our punishment of bad people who have done bad things in our politics. And there are a lot of them, and they've done very bad things in recent years, like lock us up and take away our rights and upend our election system. We don't want to be cruel. We don't want to be excessively harsh on them. Likewise, we don't want to fall into the other extreme of being totally remiss in punishing them. If you just let the guilty people run amok, that's bad for everyone. There's no justice in that. It's going to incentivize them to commit more injustice. That's a bad thing, to violate more people and more rights. Most Americans voted for the retribution because we recognize that it is in our interest. It is actually a political necessity to punish bad people in an appropriate way for doing bad things, because we want to have a good, stable country with the rule of law where Lady Justice is blind and where people can enjoy the rights that we have traditionally enjoyed. That's what people voted for. That is a vindication of real democracy. That is a vindication of the rule of law. That is a vindication of good government. We saw it last night. Now, folks, it's time to ramp up your financial game with Ramp. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. They allow you to issue cards to every employee with limits and restrictions that you set. Expense reporting is automated. No more wasting time at the end of every month trying to piece together who spent what. Ramp software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time. You will close your books 8 times faster, but Ramp is not just about saving time. It's about saving money. On average, businesses using Ramp save 5% in their first year. The best part is the Ramp is so easy to use. Get started in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. Now, get $250 when you join Ramp. That is ramp.com/Knowles, RAMP.com/Knowles, Knowles, ramp.com/Knowles. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, so Jonathan Capehart, this bum from PBS, blames the American people for subverting democracy by voting for the thing that they want and the candidate that they want. NBC was a little subtler about it. They chose to blame Joe Biden for waiting too long before dropping out.
Well, and that's what makes the timing, I think, of President Biden's decision to step down after the debate something that, if she does in fact lose, will be under a microscope, because, of course, there was so much discussion, even over the summer, about potentially having an open primary and having that fight play out within the Democratic Party. So I think it's one of the big questions moving forward.
Did Biden just wait too long? Well, hold on. Speaking of democracy and opposing democracy, Biden ran for re-election to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. And he's the guy that all the Democrat voters voted for, that the vast majority of them voted for. So he played according to the rules. Democrats then changed the rules and booted him out and swapped out the candidates for someone that no one had voted for while she was running for president. But they got to blame the white guy. I don't know. They got Joe Biden. I'm not defending Joe Biden here. I would never really like to defend Joe Biden. But how is it Biden's fault? He just ran for a second term and he gave primary voters an opportunity to oppose him. And they chose him. And I think after Kamala got absolutely slaughtered last night, especially in the blue wall, I think a lot of Democrats have to be wondering, not, as NBC is, did Biden wait too long to get out? I think they have to be wondering whether it was wise to swap him out in the first place. I think Biden also would have lost to Trump. I think in elections that are conducted in an efficient and fair way, in normal circumstances, I think voters generally understand that Trump is a much more attractive candidate than Joe Biden. But I think we can never know for certain, but I think Biden probably would have done a little bit better than Harris. There's a reason Harris never won any primary votes when she was running for president. She's not likable. Joe Biden, say what you will about him, he's obviously declined. He obviously has dementia. He's a pretty good retail politician. The guy got elected before he was even constitutionally eligible to be in the U.S. Senate, and he stayed there for about half a century, and he ascended to the vice presidency and then to the presidency long after people thought he had a shot at it. He's a pretty good retail politician. Now they want to blame Biden. He waited a little too long before getting out. You guys pushed him out. He wanted to stay in, and you probably would have fared better at the polls had he stayed in. You can blame Joe Biden for a lot of things. I wouldn't blame him for that. Meanwhile, CNN looks to be blaming Kamala.
So you asked, are there any places that the vice president is overperforming Joe Biden in 2020? So we could show you that as well. We just bring that out here. Harris overperforming in 2020.
Holy smokes.
There you go. So let this go away and see if there's anything on the east side there.
Literally nothing?
Literally nothing.
Literally not one county?
Love that. Love that from Jake Tepper. Hold on. Wait, literally nothing? Now, in fairness, this is a state map. That was not a county map. So when you drill down into the counties, I think there might literally be a county or some handful of counties in which Harris did a little bit better. But broadly speaking, that map is right. At the state level, she did not perform better than Biden in any state. I think a lot of people are asking themselves this morning, hold on. Kamala Harris got 20 million fewer votes than Joe Biden? Where'd those 20 million people go? Huh? I mean, sure, people are less inclined to vote for Kamala Harris. She's a less exciting candidate. Not that Joe Biden's a particularly exciting candidate, but where'd those 20 million people go? It really makes you scratch your head and wonder. It makes you wonder more about where those 20 million votes came from the first time, I guess. But all's well that ends well, I guess. So okay, let's fine. Just blame Kamala. Say Kamala is such a terrible candidate that she got tens of millions fewer votes than Joe Biden did. Okay, fine. Well, now all the more reason to oppose what NBC is saying. Oh, Biden waited too long to get out. No, man, you should have, even if Joe Biden had wanted to get out, you should have strapped him to a gurney and forced him to remain the nominee. He obviously did much, much better than Kamala Harris. Regardless, at least in my view of politics, the buck stops at the top. And so Kamala bears the blame. However, she wouldn't accept that last night. This election was not close. It was clear early on. Got to give props to Marsha Blackburn. We spoke to Senator Blackburn on the show yesterday. Said, Senator, are we going to be here all week? When are we going to know? And she said, you'll be at 270 by midnight. And she was almost exactly correct. In fact, we were a little bit conservative in when we were willing to call the race last night. We probably could have called it earlier, probably exactly when she said we could have. And there is no excuse for Kamala Harris not to concede last night. She should have called Trump. She should have publicly conceded. At the very least, she should have shown up to her supporters, few though they were, to address them. That's what a leader does. And she didn't do that. She trotted out her campaign co-chairman to send the people home.
Thank you for believing in the promise of America. We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the vice president tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation.
This gives big 2016 vibes. Much of yesterday gave big 2016 vibes. But to send your supporters home without even showing up, you just send out a campaign flack, albeit a top campaign flack, to go out there and say, hey, thanks so much for your support for Kamala. She's not here for you, but anyway, go home. Whenever she stops crying, or I don't know, whenever she sobers up, I don't know what was going on in Kamala HQ, but whenever she is in a position to actually meet the moment, then she'll come out and talk to you. This is a total vindication of people who said this woman does not have the chops. She does not have the leadership qualities to be president. A leader shows up. That woman didn't show up. Same thing is true of Hillary in 16. Hillary in 16, she wouldn't show up there. She was probably throwing lamps across the hotel room when she lost. And so she sent out John Podesta, her campaign chairman. And John Podesta, I guess this set the precedent for this new way to not concede an election. And Podesta had the most ridiculous line I'd heard of Hillary's whole campaign.
And we are so proud of her. She's done an amazing job, and she is not done yet. So thank you for being with her. She has always been with you. I have to say this tonight. Good night.
Good night. Go home. Thank you for being with Hillary. She's always been with you, except for right now when it matters. And she's not with you. She refuses to show up, actually. And that's why she sent me here. Go home. Because one of the lines about Hillary in her presidential ambitions was, is she prepared to take that call? 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, the nuclear weapons are flying. There's some international crisis. Who do you trust to take that call? It's not her. Because there it was, wee small hours. Hillary's nowhere to be found at the decisive moment of her political career. She either can't be bothered or she's not in a state to talk to you. The same exact thing is true of Kamala Harris. People who said Hillary doesn't have the chops, Hillary doesn't have the leadership qualities, Kamala doesn't have the fitness for the office, totally vindicated. There's a lot of vindication going on right now, okay? But on those points in particular, totally vindicated. Kamala Harris proved, as Hillary Clinton did on election night 2016, proved her detractors right. The woman is not fit to be president. She can't lead. She doesn't have the courage or the stamina or the gumption to actually meet the moment. She proved it. And we were all proved right. And that feels really good, doesn't it? Now, there's one last group that is being blamed for Kamala's loss. Last but not least, perhaps. And that is us. You might remember a few days ago on the show, I mentioned a story that came out of the New York Times. And it was a story that popped up for me because my face was the center of it. It was about 9 podcasters and streamers said election falsehoods take off on YouTube as it looks the other way. This is the podcast election, according to outlets like the Washington Post and the New York Times. And election falsehoods are flying on YouTube. And there was my face right there in the middle. And I said, well, what did I say? I've been pretty precise, I think, in my commentary on the election. What did they catch me on? What did I say that qualifies as an election falsehood? And I looked through the article and I didn't find anything. They didn't quote me as saying anything. They didn't mention me at all. Hold on. You're not going to mention me in the article, but you make my face the center of your campaign to get these right-wing podcasters and streamers kicked off YouTube? What's that about? What it's about is the New York Times doesn't like my podcast, and they don't like Ben's podcast. They don't like all the other podcasts that are on here. The liberal establishment broadly doesn't like that. Jeff Bezos made that clear in an op-ed he wrote in his own newspaper, the Washington Post. He said, we're not going to endorse Kamala, not because we're not libs, but because we don't have credibility anymore, and the credibility is all going to the podcasters and the streamers. And we don't like that. We want to keep the credibility. So then the Washington Post launched a similar attack right at the same time to try to pressure big tech to kick the podcasters out. They called it the podcast election. And we are being blamed for that a little bit. And I'm honored by being blamed for that. If we played any modest role in this election in allowing information to get out that ordinarily would not, in allowing information to reach audiences that it ordinarily would not reach, maybe people in that big, broad coalition that Trump has assembled, that Trump really deserves a lot of credit for assembling. But if we in the new media space, in podcasting and streaming, have helped to get that information out there, Elon Musk deserves a lot of credit for this, because he actually put his $44 billion where our mouths are and bought one of the big tech platforms and allowed that information to get out there in a way that it had not before. Then I'm really gratified to hear that. That's really, really good news. It is no surprise that the left would preemptively launch a campaign to take us all out if this were a close election, or if Kamala won, or if Trump won but Republicans or Democrats had the House, say, or if Democrats somehow pulled a miracle and held the Senate. But that's not what happened. Republicans have everything right now, have a unified government. They have the White House, they have the Senate, they have the House, looks like they have the Supreme Court in a way. The one part of the government they don't have is the bureaucracy, the administrative state. But the Supreme Court dealt a really tough blow to the leftist progressive bureaucracy by overruling Chevron deference, which had empowered the administrative agencies in all sorts of ways. So President Trump has an historic opportunity to reshape the bureaucracy. Unified government right now, an historic opportunity. We've not seen anything like this in any of our lifetimes. Now we got to use it. We got to use it for good. Folks, you may have heard, I've been talking about it, a little bit today. History was made last night. Trump pulled off the greatest political comeback ever, becoming the 47th president of the United States. We said we'd cover the election from the start to the finish, and we did that. We thought that might take us 5 days, 2 weeks. I thought maybe I wouldn't sleep for many, many days. And no, start to finish was about 1 or 2 a.m. last night. More importantly, you delivered by showing up to vote. You made your voice heard. You made this victory possible. Now, there are big battles ahead, but we have proven time and time again, when we fight, we win. If you are not a member yet, now's the time to join and fight. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Trump for 47% off. That is right, 47% off for the 47th president. Do not miss out. Join us at dailywire.com/subscribe with code Trump. My favorite comment yesterday from Rumhe0. My grandparents are voting for Kamala Harris this time. I was so mad I left the cemetery. I'll tell you, folks, this was such a rout of the Democrats. I don't even think the dead voted for the Democrats this time. The dead, black people are a reliable Democrat group. They started to crack for some Republicans. Hispanics had been a reliable Democrat group. They started to crack for the Republicans. Muslims, Arabs, Jews, on and on and on. But the dead, the Democrats have had a lock on the dead for many decades. And I don't know. I don't even think the dead showed up. Boy, oh boy, what a routing. Okay, so where are we at? We've talked a lot about the presidency. We've talked a lot about the media blaming people. Where are we at with the Senate races? The GOP won the Senate and maybe won the Senate by a lot. I mean, this information is coming in real time. So producers, if any news breaks while I'm chatting with you, please do let me know. But the Republicans were close in the Senate already. They just had to pick up a seat or so. And they did that in West Virginia. That was basically guaranteed. Unless the pollsters were totally wrong and underestimating Democrats, that was going to go to the Republicans. Then Ted Cruz in Texas, our friend, was a little bit on the ropes earlier in the summer. He won a decisive victory there. But then you had other states. When we went to bed last night, the media were saying guaranteed 51 Republicans. I said, yeah, I know 51 Republicans in the Senate. I know that. I know we won. But I want to know how many. So Mr. Davies telling me, okay, now it's guaranteed 52. But it's looking like it could be better than that. I said Mike Rogers in Michigan was looking pretty good. I said these races at Montana was looking quite good. Wisconsin looking good. I was hoping Sam Brown in Nevada. We'll see. I don't know if Nevada's been called yet since we've been on air. It's a little bit of a tougher race, but still had a good shot there. We just needed 51. 52 is really good. But by the middle of last night, we were starting to talk 53, maybe 54 vote majority in the Senate, maybe 55. That's how things started to look. That is really solid stuff, though. All you needed was that 51. And now with the White House going to the Republicans, the vice president becomes the tie-breaking vote, if there is a needed tie-breaking vote in the U.S. Senate. So now we're looking comfortable. Why does the Senate matter? Well, the Senate matters because the Senate has to advise and consent. on important appointments, on judges, on Supreme Court judges. So one of the biggest wins from Trump's first term were those Supreme Court justices who overruled Roe v. Wade, who gave conservatives the biggest, most important judicial win in half a century. There were other big wins too, by the way. Well, now you've got some Supreme Court justices who are getting a little bit long in the tooth. They're of a certain age. They're not, I wouldn't call them elderly yet, but they're in their 70s. And they're getting up into their 70s. And at the end of this term, they'll be looking up into their 70s. People like the great Justice Thomas or the great Justice Sam Alito. Well, if you got a Republican in the White House and you have a good Republican majority in the Senate, maybe those justices at the right time, at the appropriate time, say they are going to retire, and you get two young, if Trump's track record is any indication, most likely solid conservative justices in their place. And then you're looking good. But even beyond the justices, there are 1,200 to 1,400 appointments, positions that Trump is going to have to fill that require Senate confirmation. I once heard from a longtime Washington, D.C. Person, a careerist, that what separates the men from the boys in these positions is the Senate confirmation. There are a lot of positions that need Senate confirmation, and senators with an axe to grind or with political power can hold up those confirmations. Well, if the GOP has a clear majority, they're going to have more tools at their disposal to get those nominees through. 12 to 1,400. And Trump's going to have to appoint a lot more people than that to the federal government. How about the House races? Do we have any update? It looks as though Republicans have at the very least held on to their slim majority in the House. There were swing districts in New York and California, which is why they're going to take a little while to come in. However, it looks as though the Republicans are going to expand their majority in the House. This is really good news. Why is this good news? Because that's where the laws are supposed to originate. Most of them anyway. Congress, the lower house, is supposed to have the power of the purse. So if you got the Democrats in control of the House, all of a sudden that can really slow down a president's agenda. Here, though, we're looking good. And then we've got that strong majority in the Senate, what is shaping up to be a strong majority in the Senate. And then you got the White House. And you've already got the Supreme Court. And the court matters because you could get retirements from Thomas and Alito, which means that you could get generational wins here. Over the course of American history, the average tenure of a Supreme Court justice is 16 years. That's pretty good. But those numbers are actually skewed a little bit because it was more common to retire earlier. You know, maybe you retire from the Supreme Court and then you run for governor of a state. Maybe you have other political aspirations. Now it's kind of a life position. You don't really do something after you retire from the Supreme Court. But think about what that means. That means that you get someone like Antonin Scalia. Antonin Scalia served on the court for 30 years. 30 years. Almost double the average. Trump has already put Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Barrett on the court. These are young people by the standards of Supreme Court justices. If he also gets to replace Thomas and Alito, we could be looking at decades of a conservative majority on the court. The sort of thing the Democrats warned their voters about, we could get that. Really, really big stuff. The libs pretty much gave it up, but they didn't give it up happily. The New York Times had a really funny bit last night. So a lot of us were watching the New York Times numbers coming in part because we were thinking back to 2016 when that famous New York Times needle, it started out, Hillary Clinton is going to win, 72 billion% certainty it's going to win. And then it goes down. It's not 99 anymore or 98. It's going tick, 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 tick. And that needle was ticking into Trump's camp. Well, a lot of us were watching that last night. And by the end, it was so clear. You know, New York Times, here it is. I just printed out the screenshot. Chance of winning, very likely Trump, greater than 95% chance of victory. Electoral College estimate, 312 Electoral College votes. Popular vote, very, very likely to go in Trump's favor. And then what's the headline? What's the update that they gave? The editorial update they gave on those numbers? He celebrates win before results are final. Hold on. I'm reading your numbers, New York Times. You're saying greater than 95% chance of victory. Very likely Trump. Absolute bloodbath in the Electoral College. Actually going to win the popular vote for the first time in 20 years for a Republican. He celebrates his win before the results are final. Why is he doing that? Because you are admitting that he's going to win. And because NBC is admitting he's going to win. And the Associated Press is admitting he's going to win. And because it's over, guys. Sorry. I'm not really sorry, I guess. I shouldn't say that I'm sorry. I'm happy. I'm really glad. On this point about retribution, you hear a lot about retribution. And then you're going to hear some calls from the squishes. Well, we don't want retribution. We don't want vengeance. No, we don't want unjust vengeance. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and I will repay. But likewise, this doesn't mean that we should allow the cruel to rape the earth unpunished. This doesn't mean that we should allow people who do terrible deeds to just be totally excused, to be encouraged to go commit more terrible deeds. That there's nothing just about that. Civil government is also instituted for us, for our good. It's given to us by God. So what do we think about retribution? We think about it in the way that Plato talks about it in Gorgias. Okay, to bring us all the way back. I know we've been kind of granular on the particular political machinations of the past 15 hours, but let's zoom out a little bit and get a wider political perspective. In Gorgias, in this Platonic dialogue, Socrates makes an important point. He says, a lot of people think that if you're a bad person, you do terrible things, that it would make you happy not to be punished. For your bad deeds to go unpunished. That would make you happy. But actually, no. That would make you very unhappy because you would persist in vice and evil, and that would harm your soul, and it would be irrational. It would be out of accord with reason, and it would ultimately make you unhappy because happiness is rational activity done with excellence in accord with virtue. So actually, the loving thing sometimes is to punish people who do bad. That's actually the charitable thing, to correct people. And we need to do it in charity. We don't want to do it out of cruelty or out of hatred or because we just really want to totally destroy people. But we want to do this out of charity. When people are doing bad things, when they're forcing big husky dudes to go get naked in your little girl's locker room, the charitable, loving thing to do is to correct those people, to punish the people who are trying to do those bad things. When they're rigging elections, when they're trying to get unfair advantages and they're trying to undermine our Republican Democratic system by, say, I don't know, trying to imprison the chief political rival, the former president, or by, I don't know, justifying his assassination, or by, I don't know, I'm just pulling things out of thin air here, but trying to prevent him from appearing on the ballot. When people, obviously, we now have the numbers, overwhelmingly wanted this guy to be president. He was such a popular candidate. Well, when they do that stuff, we have to punish them in a charitable way, but we need to correct those injustices. That's good for everybody because it's going to protect the people whose rights were being violated, and it's going to instruct the guys who are doing the bad stuff. It's going to show them that bad deeds are not the answer, and poisoning our system and trying to manipulate and pervert and distort our political system and violate people's rights. That's not going to bode well for them in the long run. In short, we just want to make America great again for the common good for all of us. We all participate in that. Okay. And so that's going to be good. Even for the libs who are crying today, it'll be good for them too. Believe it or not. They might not want to, but it will be. It will be. And that's something wonderful. And we can all celebrate it in charity and in gratitude. We got much more to talk about, folks. Okay. The formal part of the daily Michael Knowles show is ending here. We have a lot more election coverage for this historic moment. This world historic moment. Okay. Certainly for the history of our country, but I think this will go down in the annals of Western and world history. At least somewhere. This is significant stuff. So we will be live through Ben Shapiro's show. Ben will pick it up in a little bit. And I'm joined by some friends of mine here. I've got the great Tim Pool coming up too. I've got my iPad to speak to the Chaim de la Chaim. I'm sorry. I'm so happy for all of you out there on X, on YouTube, who are watching this. I'm so glad we can go live. We have to go live, obviously, at this moment. But I'm not taking your questions because you got to be in the fight, like the people who were in the Chem de la Chem of the Michael Knowles show, Membrum Segmentum. Okay, so go to Daily Wire Plus, give us your money, support the fight. This is good stuff. Support the fight. We're getting good wins here. What are we getting? From Sarah36. I have no charity for my fellow libs. I will bathe in their tears. Okay, well, all right, there's a little schadenfreude that begins. Okay, it's understandable at least, but it's good. And we want to punish our opponents out of love. I saw there were some great bits last night where these libs, they were tweeting out, I'm just so sad. I don't have anything really to say. I'm just sad. And then I think it was Vish Bura, the Republican consultant, who just tweeted out, he goes, we're not finished with you yet. We're not, you think you're sad now? We ain't done yet. Okay. We haven't even started the deportations yet. Okay. I think he was being funny about that, but there is a lot of truth to that. The liberals who upended our political system. I'm not saying the libs who just voted for Kamala or Joe Biden, or the libs who tried to get a little advantage within the broad tradition of American politics. I'm talking about people who did really bad stuff, who tried to imprison political rivals, who justified the assassination of Trump, people who did really bad stuff. They have to be punished out of charity for all of us, for our political system, for the common good of the United States, and for their own good, because they're doing really bad things. And just as we would punish a drug dealer on the street, some guy committing petty street crime, we have to punish people who are willfully violating the law. People who encouraged a mass invasion of Satan-worshiping gangsters from Latin America, who encouraged this stuff, who promoted them, who gave them privileges that even American citizens don't have, they need to face consequences for that. People have died because of those actions, okay? Our rights have been trampled because of, we need law and order so that everybody knows the rules and so that everybody can flourish. You dig? You dig, man? What do you think, Mr. Poole? A man who needs no introduction whatsoever, Tim Poole, joining the program. I was on your show last night. You're on my show now. You've been on there. You were on the Daily Wire show before. Other people from the Daily Wire have been on your show. I barely remember what day it is at this point. How you feeling?
Tired. I think I got about 4 hours of sleep, but my exhaustion is masked by my enthusiasm. So I am here. We got work to do. This is just the beginning.
What did you expect going in? I'll put my cards on the table. I did expect a Trump win. I was cautiously optimistic. I did expect, I thought there was a good chance we would find out last night. I did not expect the popular vote. I did not expect that bloodbath in the Electoral College. I did not expect the gains that it looks like Republicans are going to get in the Senate. I did not expect to hold the House. I didn't even expect to hold the House. We were promised a red wave a couple years ago. We got the red tsunami last night.
It's a little early for the House, so I'm a little nervous there because I think Decision Desk is projecting 218 seats, the thinnest of majorities. But We'll see. Okay. Maybe we're going to do better than they're projecting. But man, in my gut, looking at the metrics, looking at sentiment, I was like, how does Trump lose this? But I felt similarly in 2020, and we don't know what we don't know. I had in the back of my mind the whole time, if it was just on the polls and just on the merits, there's no way there's no way the Republicans lose, but shadow campaign. And you know what I'm thinking? We had that story out of PA where they said they caught thousands of potentially fraudulent voter registrations, and then it was confirmed that hundreds were fraudulent. Many people were saying that they may have stopped this attempt dead in its tracks, and that's ultimately what made sure this election was free and fair. But let's just put it this way. 20 million votes evaporated in 4 years for the Democrats. I wonder what that was about.
My wife asked me about that this morning because she went to bed. We got the little kids, and she left the party early, so she got the news, after I got home, unless she was checking Twitter or something in the middle of the night. And one of the first things she says this morning, she goes, so where'd those 20 million people go? And the thing is, without delving too much into retrospective history, Kamala Harris is a much worse candidate than Joe Biden, even with dementia. So I am not surprised that many fewer people would vote for Kamala Harris. You could even say that, look, the Democrats changed all the election rules, in some cases unconstitutionally, as in the case of Pennsylvania in 2020. So because the rules were all different, and now they're kind of like in the middle of the way they changed the rules, but and in between that and the way things were before, that maybe the numbers would just be all sorts of skewed and all sorts of different. Okay. But it does raise your eyebrow, doesn't it, Tim? That's 20 million. That's a big number.
That's big. But you know what I'm also excited about is Alan Lichtman, the Nostradamus of elections, was wrong. And you know what? Let me just say for everyone out there, Moo Dang was a better forecaster than Alan Lichtman this time around.
For those who don't know Alan Lichtman, who are not familiar with this famous or infamous political character, who is Mr. Lichtman?
He's the Nostradamus of politics. He claims that in the past, the past dozen or so elections, he's accurately predicted, based on what he calls the keys to the White House, who will be the president. Except I think he got 2000 wrong, but argued that he should 2000. He argued he should have been right. And this time around, he said Kamala Harris is going to win. But I, on my show, as well as our guests, kept going through his list of his keys.
Yes.
None of it made sense.
Yeah.
It was as though, I mean this in all sincerity, I do feel bad for him because I think he is a smart guy. And I think his keys aren't bad predictors. The problem is the corporate press has been lying more and more. And here's an older guy who's getting his news from CNN and MSNBC. And when they told him the economy was good, he said yes. When they said there were no scandals, he said yes. When they said there were no military defeats, he said yes. And anyone with a brain looked at that and said, Alan, are you forgetting
but hold on, Tim.
Afghanistan?
I agree with you on this whole take, and I agree with you on those points you just made. But the one that I couldn't get over, the one key that Alan Lichtman had, I think the New York Times put out a whole video of him explaining the keys in his 2024 prediction. One of them was, which candidate is more charismatic? He phrased it a little more precisely, and he gave it to Kamala, or he said that Trump just did not possess that adequate charisma, as say Ronald Reagan did. And I thought, look, I am a huge Reagan fan. I really, really admire the Gipper. You're going to be hard pressed to find greater admirers of him than me. But he said Trump doesn't have the charisma of a Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama. Trump has more raw political charisma than those two guys combined. Okay. Trump is a generational, once in a century kind of, how on earth is he going to say Donald Trump doesn't have charisma and Kamala's therefore going to win?
He was watching MSNBC, and the only thing he ever saw was out of context clips that made Trump look silly and look bad. Those of us who listened to the man speak laughed and smiled and cheered him on.
Yes. I'll tell you, I had never been in person to a Trump rally. There were a couple of occasions where I was maybe going to get to interview President Trump or, maybe get to one of these sorts of events, and just didn't work out over the years with traveling and schedules. I made it to MSG. I said, I got to go to this one. This is a big one. And so I go there, and I was pretty close up to the president. And I'll tell you, even I've been a supporter of his for a long time, since 2016, and I've been aware of Donald Trump literally my whole life. I'm a New Yorker. This guy's been a celebrity for as long as I've been alive. And I was sitting there, and I didn't realize until I saw him in person. I said, oh, this guy, he's like Elvis. The way he comes off on TV, especially the liberal channels, they make him out to be like Archie Bunker or something like that. Kind of goofy, but he's funny and he's engaging, but he's kind of goofy. No, man, you see that guy live. He's not Archie Bunker. He's Elvis. Okay. That guy has such raw showbiz magnetism. The Lichtman point, just to bring it all back to the Nostradamus of politics, I thought, oh, maybe your keys to presidential victory are correct. Maybe they hold. It's just your analysis of this race is totally off.
I mean, what's really amazing is that last night was not just a political victory. It was a cultural victory in numerous ways. With the popular vote victory, this is a rebuke of the far left woke cult. But additionally, it is a sign that the corporate press and the narrative machine is done.
Yes.
Every lie, every hoax, every manipulation failed, exemplified by the popular vote victory. So Tim, that means...
Well, I can't help but notice. I have this little New York Times hit piece that came out a few days ago trying to get us all booted off YouTube. It was a pressure campaign.
That's right.
And I noticed right next to me, there's your face right there. The Washington Post called this the podcast election. New York Times, election falsehoods take off on YouTube. They take off, huh? Well, they're trying to blame us. They're trying to set the stage to destroy our careers and our voice. And not really even just for us, but because conservatives are getting information that they weren't getting on CNN, for instance, or from the New York Times. Looks like that campaign failed too, Tim. Looks like trying to take out Mr. Poole hasn't worked out all that well for them.
They've done a bunch of these. This one was a bigger one. And when the story broke, I said, I'm thinking to myself, do I have to worry? So I go to the NewYorkTimes.com and I start scrolling down the front page to try and find the story. And I could not. It was buried in the technology section. They tried to do this big splash hit piece, putting all of our faces and names in a story to get search engine optimization, and no one cared.
I love it. They didn't even mention me. They put me right there in the picture, but they didn't even mention me in the story. And I said, well, I guess I'm just a pretty face to them. What a pity. I'm just clickbait for them. But it was so obvious and brazen what they were trying to do. This had nothing to do. This had very little to do with ideology. This was a business move for them. They said, these guys, these podcasters, these streamers, Timcast IRL is coming in on our turf. They're taking our eyeballs and our advertising dollars, and they're reaching people with their message, which competes with our message, and we're going to try to take them out. And I hate to give it to the New York Times or the Washington Post. They're probably right to view that business threat. When they call this the podcast election, Joe, forget about me, even you and me. Joe Rogan alone might have swung a lot of votes in a lot of important states to President Trump.
I think he did. And we saw Dana White at Trump's victory speech shouting out the Nelk Boys as well. Their Full Send podcast. This is it.
Aiden Ross.
And Aiden Ross, absolutely. It's social media personalities, the views, the audience, they're with the new generation, and the narrative machine is done. That's what I'm mostly excited about. Let's get back to real competition where those who tell the truth succeed, because the people who watch us are not stupid and they know when they're being lied to. And that's why they're leaving the corporate press.
Absolutely right. So Tim, are you going to nap today? Or are you going to, or no, or we're just all on air all the time now. Because the reality is, if you and I were not here right now speaking to people through a camera out into all of the big platforms that the libs want to kick us off of, we would just be, at least for me, I would just be sitting on my phone updating all those social media feeds anyway. So people are just, it's just one of these moments. You're like a moth to a flame. You cannot look away from history.
Man, it's a good day. Like I said, my exhaustion is masked by enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But it is remarkable to see that your show, my show, the rest of the Daily Wire, all of these voices, and made possible by people like Elon Musk. And then shout out to all of the media, but also I got to give a shout out every opportunity to Scott Pressler.
Yes.
This is the guy who went on the ground in PA.
Killed it.
I don't think the guy slept for years.
Yeah.
he single-handedly registering people, flipping counties from Democrat to Republican. He's not the only one, but he probably worked the hardest and had the biggest impact. So that man is a legend and a hero.
Yes, and he doesn't get enough credit for it. He doesn't. Another person we got to give a hand to, though, Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk.
Oh yeah.
There were a lot of people when Charlie was basically given the Trump get out the vote operation. So good luck, kid. And there were a lot of people who underestimated this guy. Charlie's been underestimated a lot of his life. He started his political career at age 18, starting TPUSA. But historic victory, first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. Look, the credit ultimately is actually due to God, but we give a lot of credit to Donald Trump. There are a lot of people who ran the campaign, Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita also. But I think it's Scott Pressler, guys who are working on the ground to actually get those voters registered. But I think you got to give a lot of credit to Charlie Kirk here.
Absolutely. Completely agree. I mean, his videos, especially when you look at how he goes on these college campuses, it's not just that he's actually influencing young people, but that the rest of us can watch the mood change from every video he was putting out. Early on, he's getting boos and people are yelling at him. The last several videos he put out, everyone's chanting Trump and MAGA, and there's very few detractors.
Yeah.
And that is his efforts on college campuses. I think we saw data showing Gen Z men were skewing towards Trump. This is because of people like Charlie Kirk, who have been reaching out to young people and saying, here's the reality and here's the truth. Their arguments are fake.
Yep. A lot of people to thank. And we'll have a lot more of that today. Tim, I will allow you to at least go get a cup of coffee or something. Thank you, by the way, for that celebratory Pappy Van Winkle last night. That was a nice way to,
it was
to
great,
toast
man.
the victory. And I guess I'll see you around these digs. You're going to be here for a couple more days.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. See you later.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Now, I want to get to a little bit in the iPad. A lot of people saying that Trump's win isn't enough, says Hemlock Fen. What do you want, folks? You know, I actually haven't seen a lot of people saying that. It's a pretty big win. I don't know. If you're not satisfied with that in politics, get out of politics. You're not going to have a good time. The sea of red hats surrounding Charlie was amazing, says Boltamaga. So true. So happy to help make history in Nevada, says Catherine. Nearly half of the Vegas area went to Trump. So many prayers answered. Incredible. HSF, that is terrible. Love you. Needs sleep, says the cool shell heart. Is your Styles fan? Did she not sleep last night? Amen. We got a lot of people going backwards here. Hold on. Let's see. Robbie Starbuck. Robbie was here last night. Megan Kelly says groovy. So true. I really need Michael to answer my mailbag question this week. I've sent it in like 3 times, all under 60 seconds. It's PLF Colin. I can try to do that, though. Maybe it's helpful to be a little bit more specific. Because if you just ask the question right there, then I could give you an answer. But alas. It's great to see Ben smile and be happy. LFG Trump, says Kyle Rasta. It is good. It is. It's rare sometimes, but it's quite good. Yes, love Scott Pressler. Jordan Peterson to Ben. This is Kyle Rasta. You're terrifying when you're happy. So true. So true. As Michael mentioned, Grover Cleveland, I have, says Gossamer. Okay. I also, now that we've talked about what it all means, now we've talked about the media freaking out, now we've celebrated a little bit, I do have to get to a few of the TikToks. Some libs last night, we want to be gracious in our victory, and some libs last night, though, they took to TikTok and they allowed their passions to run away with them. And we'll just observe that. We're going to take that in and digest it a little bit, starting with a young man, a young Democrat operative who has been truly shameless in his hackery and irrational promotion of Democrat candidates. Harry Sisson, take it away.
So the election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris has not been called yet. We do not know who the winner is, but it is pointing in one direction. And it's not final, but I just wanted to say that America failed women tonight, primarily. Trump has insulted women, berated them,
Only
has been
Rosita
found
Dunn.
liable in court for assaulting a woman. And he took women's reproductive rights away. And instead of standing up to that, people voted for it. And we failed our daughters, our mothers, our sisters, our wives tonight. America failed them. We failed them. It is unfortunately the reality of the situation. So I'm sorry to everybody out there who will be impacted by what may come.
How about that? America failed women. A lot of women voted for Trump, didn't they? He won the popular vote. He won a lot of women. That's weird, but we failed women because Monsieur Sisson says we voted for a guy who, broadly speaking, thinks it's bad for mothers to murder their children. So that's how we failed women. It says we failed our daughters. We failed our daughters by voting for a guy who doesn't think little girls should be forced to strip naked in public changing rooms in front of big husky dudes. We failed our daughters because we rejected the woman who wanted to force big dudes into little girls' bathrooms. Okay. We failed our daughters because we elected a guy who, broadly speaking, doesn't think your daughter should be encouraged to be sexually used by a bunch of men and exploited and then pressured into murdering her kid. You know, we failed our... Did we? I don't know. It seems like we protected our daughters. We protected our women. We protected America. Bon, Mr. Sisson. Qu'est-ce que c'est que cette histoire? C'est la vie, mon ami. Next one.
When I look at her in her face and when she was talking to me, I really felt like she was very genuine. I felt like she was not playing games. And she had 100 days to do all of this. And she woke this nation up. She woke this nation up. I feel like there was a lot of things that went wrong. I feel like last year they kept her too much in the background. And a lot of people were asking, but what was Harris doing? What was Harris doing? And I know for a fact that she just didn't have much power last year. I feel like they kept her a lot in the background last year. And I feel like they put her in a position this year to practically save the day. And she did a lot. Academics are the true pecker. Academics is crazy. And I'm proud of her, and I hope that she's proud of herself. No matter what happens tonight, this is gonna be like one of the most unforgettable elections. And I love her. And I don't say I love a lot of people.
Okay. Still more coherent than any speech Kamala's ever given. What is the point that Ms. B is making here? She says, well, last year, the White House kept Kamala in the background. They didn't put her front and center all that much. And that is true. Cardi B is making a good point here. Is it possible that they did that for a reason? Because we now have more data points. This year, they did put Kamala front and center. And every time they did that, she became even less popular. So every time she would do an interview, before she did the interviews in her campaign, her poll numbers were okay. Then she started doing interviews and just presenting herself to the American people, and her numbers collapsed. So in a way, it would seem that what Cardi B is complaining about, the White House hiding Kamala in the back, that was probably the smart strategy. And actually, had they just hid her in the back forever, and if they just left Biden as the nominee, I'm not saying they would have beaten Trump. They probably wouldn't have, but they would have done much better. Seems to me Kamala was the problem. Next one.
We may not have rights tomorrow.
Yo, I'm scared to go to sleep. I might wake up a motherfucking slave.
Anyone else having a meltdown? I don't know how to do this. Right now, I'm just not. I can't deal with it right now. I am 48 years old and I have never experienced anything like this and never thought I would in this country. No, wait. I'm so stressed. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to get through the next couple days.
Wow, this really raises a lot of serious questions for me. Like, who should we deport first? You know? No, I'm joking. That woman, the 48-year-old woman, actually stirs sympathy in me because she said her age. Had she said, I'm 18 and I'm screaming and I'm crying because Kamala should have won and the Mango Mussolini is going to destroy the bar, I'd say, like, all right, little girl, you don't know anything. But this woman's 48 years old and she says she doesn't know how to cope with a Republican winning political office. That is really sad. That's really sad. this woman, something's going wrong in this woman's life. The face tattoo is generally not an indication of great things. Again, not. So we love our people in the face tattoo community who vote for Republicans, but it's probably an indication that something's going a little bit wrong in life. And if you're 48 years old and you don't know how to process this, and you're this fragile and broken, that's a pity. That's a pity. And something that President Trump is going to focus on is making life better for those people. Because when you look at, actually, it looks like even single women or younger women were trending a little bit more Republican than last time here. But married women are more likely to vote Republican than single women. And so there are two ways to fix that. If you're a Republican, you can either reach out to single women and try to, change your message to appeal to single women, or you can encourage people to get married, not only for opportunistic political reasons, but because marriage is good. It's good for people to get married. And the more people get married, the more conservative society is going to be. And the more you encourage normal behaviors and you discourage things like vice and selfishness and self-harm, and the more you will actually just get a more the people will become more conservative. You'll get a more conservative society. And so that's what we're going to do. And some of those people who are crying, they will still cry in 2028 and 2032 and whenever else we win elections. But for some of those people, they might find that their life actually improves under Trump, and they might even change the way they view politics. Now, speaking of young women, I am so pleased to be joined by Alex Clark, who has been on the show before, who you all know from many venues, TPUSA, who is also the host of Culture Apothecary. I'm not sure. First of all, Alex, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh my gosh, what a day to be here, Michael. What a freaking day.
What a day. It also occurs to me, I don't think you've been on the show since you have been introduced as the host of Culture Apothecary, which is a great name for a show. I think reflective of the moment that we're in. We're talking, by the way, about medicinal things, medicinal politics, medicinal justice. People, especially women they're having a little bit of a hard time because they've been duped into bad things by our culture. And, we're going to fix that. We're going to rehabilitate all sorts of things. So, Alex, I give you the floor. I close my mouth. Just give me your unvarnished id.
I just have not been able to stop smiling since this word came down early morning, or last night, however it was for you. I was telling everyone I could when the RFK endorsement happened. I said, guys, this is the secret weapon. This is what we needed. I am on the ground, so to speak, at least on social media, talking to women voters 25 to 35 en masse every single day. I have for going on 6 years. I know them like the back of my hand. I know that these issues about corruption in food, corruption in pharma are the most important things to them. Obviously, border problems, economy, but these are huge for them. They were really torn when RFK was running separate from Trump. They were hoping that Trump was going to make him VP. There was a lot of them that were wondering if they should vote for RFK over Trump. So when this endorsement happened, I told Charlie Kirk, who's my boss, I said, this is it. This is what's going to make or break the election. I'm telling you, I said, don't discount the crunchy moms. We are going to see a crunchy mom wave. And I think a lot of the success last night can be attributed to these mom voters. I just had Zen Honeycutt on. She is the founder of Moms Across America. This is a grassroots organization that has been trying to get moms to vote on the issue of GMOs and glyphosate in our food for decades now. And she has always been politically liberal. But her whole camp, and this is tens of thousands of moms across America, they were all voting for Trump. And she said the most powerful grassroots group to legislators is the mother, because moms are the ones who are making every little decision on a day-to-day basis about things that are going to affect their family. And they also know that when a mom is motivated and she is passionate about something, which is how they feel about things like the vaccine childhood schedule that has exploded to over 70 shots now, or chemicals that are allowed in our food that isn't allowed in other countries, they're going to vote based on that. And so this is unprecedented. This is historic. we are finally going to get this stuff done on the health front that moms have been complaining about for decades, and nobody has been willing to listen until now. Trump and RFK are willing to listen. This is incredible. I can't express how elated I am enough.
Okay, I agree with you. I know this is happening because my wife has become a tad crunchy and makes me buy the $12 college-educated eggs, and it has to be the special flour for the thing that's rolled in this way so that the chemicals in the water that turn the frogs gay go through a special filter that I had to install in my sink that I'm supposed to install in my shower. And I know, I've heard it all. Okay, and I know that's real. There was just a major profile of you that was going around, I think it was in Drudge, or LinkedIn Drudge, about this rise of the kind of crunchy mom. But to your point, these people were all liberal until about 5 minutes ago. Bobby Kennedy is a liberal, and he's lived in the town that I was born in. You know, I've been very aware of Bobby Kennedy for most of my life, and it was always libs who supported this stuff. It switched relatively recently in terms of the political ID of these people, mostly women. Why now? Why the big switch? Why the big realignment?
Well, first of all, the pandemic is what grabbed a lot of conservative voters into being interested in food and pharma, myself included. I was the chicken nugget princess, Dr. Pepper injected into my veins until like 2.5 years ago, and then I completely changed my life. So it's so ironic to my friends and family that now I'm hosting the biggest health and wellness podcast in the conservative movement. It's honestly hysterical because that was not me. But for so many conservative voters, that is the case. When we were mandated to take that shot, that was a wake-up call to a lot of people, and they started, looking further into food and pharma corruption in this country. That's those voters. President Trump now has the opportunity to do something so huge for the Republican Party now that he has won, and he has garnered all of these liberal political moms because of RFK. If he keeps his promises, if he does what he says he's going to do, if they realize, okay, I held my nose and I voted for Trump because I wanted RFK, but he's just not that bad. If he behaves himself and, he keeps up with all the Trump things that everybody knows and loves, and he stays away from kind of more of the controversial things for people that lean more middle politically, just with, some of his rhetoric and stuff that he says that you and I think is hilarious and love, but, it rubs those moms the wrong way. If he can toe the line enough to show them, look, voting for me wasn't that bad, and actually I did what I said I was going to do, I think we could court tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of new women voters to the Republican Party if we play these next 4 years correctly. I think we could have them for life.
Well, there is an obvious realignment happening. That word has been used and abused in recent years, and people are always waiting. Okay, you're telling me there's a realignment. When are the black voters going to break with the Dems? When are the Hispanic voters going to break with the Dems? When is Labor going to break with the Dems? And it has sort of felt like it's been 40 years since Reagan said Hispanics are conservatives. They don't know it yet. And maybe they just don't know it. Maybe they're not going to know it until this election. You say, okay, hold on. Wow. Trump actually does win a good chunk of the black male vote. Trump actually does win a huge chunk of Hispanics. Trump's winning Arabs and Jews and Muslims and Labor and everybody. So it would appear that the realignment is real. And one of the lesser discussed aspects of the realignment are these crunchy hippie moms, these relatively affluent, slightly eccentric white ladies, often in the suburbs, who don't want to feed their kids food that has 6 paragraphs of ingredients on the back of the box. And I love these women. I'm very close to these women. I know a lot of them personally. The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. You point out that women do have a huge political role. They're managing the fundamental unit of politics, the household, the family. So if you win that group, it's significant.
The culture war starts at home, and it is moms. Obviously, dads lead the family. They're the head of the household. That's what you and I believe. But it is, like I said, the moms that are making those decisions. We're the ones that are taking those kids to the pediatrician's office, and we are the go-between between that pediatrician and what's going into our children. We are the ones who are at the grocery store deciding what we're feeding and nourishing our family. Imagine how people are going to vote 4 years from now when they haven't been eating poison, giving them brain fog, and being medicated out the wazoo, unable to critically think. Clear-headed voters, that is the future that we're looking at. What could that mean for us? I believe eyes are going to be open in ways like we've never seen, and that the conservative movement, this is really the new conservative movement now with the second Trump term, or I guess I don't know what you would call this, but second Trump presidency.
The beginning of the imperial Caesar reign of the Trump family. No, that's just what I'm calling it.
That's just what they say. No, and I think Trump said it's the golden age or something last night in his speech. It really is. Like, I think the Republican Party is going to be completely different, and I am so excited for what is to come, and especially with women. Like I said, we have such an opportunity here. I hope Trump realizes it. I know RFK does. And, you know, maybe RFK isn't going to say he's a full-blown conservative after this. Maybe he will. Maybe after working with Trump for 4 years, he'll be like, you know what? I think I might be conservative, which would be great. But I think a lot of people are going to be hit on the head with maybe Republicans and conservatives aren't that bad. Maybe I have a lot more in common with them value-wise than I thought. And clearly this hype for Kamala, I mean, that shows that America, the biggest picture here overall isn't that everybody's crunchy and organic in America, not yet anyway. But the biggest picture is this was a big middle finger to woke. People unequivocally voted against woke, against men and women's sports. The trans agenda is officially dead. I think we can say that's over. So this is really, really great news.
Yes, and you mentioned there, even beyond the food, the drugs, the fact that we're drugging people, and especially women. We drug women to a shocking degree, a huge percentage of American women. That includes teenage girls, that includes middle-aged women. We just put them on really powerful psych drugs and antidepressants and all the rest. And this has distressed me for some time because we talk about all the kind of insanity, the political insanity, the strange positions people hold, the strange campaigns that people will promote. I mean, notably, the transgender movement is just so obviously irrational. It's a bit odd. And so you try to come up with all of these causes for it. And I wonder, as you say, you talk about brain fog and drugging, how much of that is just because we are pumping people full of very powerful psych meds from a very young age, and we're not letting up. And if maybe we adjust that regimen a little bit, maybe people will come back to earth. A great place to get more information about all this stuff is Culture Apothecary with Alex Clark. And then now politically, we can actually do something about these problems. Alex, I have to leave it there. Wonderful to see you on this very, very happy day. And I'll look forward to celebrating in person whenever I next run into you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael.
Good to see you, Alex. Okay. I want to get to at least one or two questions before we toss to my friend, Monsieur Shapiro. The Shuckmeister, no bugs, no fake meat, no SSRIs. Probably a good idea. As a general rule, not saying there are never any exceptions, but it's probably a pretty good rule. AW Shep 0574. I work in a Catholic school. A ton of parents put their girls on birth control and tell their daughters it's for acne. These kids have little choice and are told lies. Yeah, crazy stuff, crazy. And so this is what, when you know, Bob Trump and brings in a ton of crunchy moms, especially, who are really focused on drugs and food. These are the stories that are motivating this. It's not that everyone's just suddenly gotten a PhD in chemistry. They just realize there's something kind of odd about putting your 12-year-old on birth control. You know, there's something kind of odd about just drugging the population with heavy psych drugs. It comes from a real sense. We talked last night about how we didn't know what to think about the polls, and so it was largely a vibes election. Well, you know, vibes get a little vindication, I think, after last night, because people just feel something has been going wrong for 4 years. It was the last 3.5 years have been an expression of deeper political wrongs that have set in over decades, and voters took the opportunity to try to start correcting them. I believe we are turning now to a man who was also up with me late last night until about 2:30 in the morning, at which point we went home and wrote our shows and then came on air to talk about the very same thing that we're probably going to be talking about for days and days and days until my liberal friends and family members throw me out of a window because I'm dancing too much for joy. Mr. Shapiro, did you get any sleep?
Not much. But I do have one thing to say to you, Michael Knowles.
Yeah.
America! Yeah, baby. Woo!
After we were, broadcasting, then we had a little party here, and then I came in, I did a quick little video. I lit up my second cigar of the evening. I went home. I'd had a couple Coca-Colas at this point. Tim Pool had Peppy Van Winkle. Went home. That was when I got to watch the liberal reaction, which gave me a whole second wind. Then I wrote my show. Then I slept for about 18 seconds. Then I came back here, and I'm ready to do it again.
Yeah, that's about right. I think that the schedule was pretty similar there, except for the cigars, because, I know you love your cigars. It kind of wrecks my voice. But what an amazing, amazing showing by President Trump. And let me tell you, this country kicks ass. I mean, this is a great, great country. Seriously, because Donald Trump's the candidate. Okay, it's all of us who have to vote for him. It's everybody out there who has to work for him and knock on doors and has to pull the lever for him, has to give to him, has to go campaign. That's the American people. I did a debate with Sam Harris over Trump versus Kamala. I've forgotten her name already. That's how non-memorable she was.
Remember her VP?
Yeah. She's like Tim Kaine. Yeah, Tim Kaine. Exactly. and I was talking with Harris, and he was like, "Well, this is all about character. This election." And I said, Sam, the real question is the character, not of the candidate, but of the American people. And the American people showed their character last night. They're sick of being spit upon. They're sick of being treated as second-class citizens in their own country for the great crime of actually believing in founding principles and wanting the things that their parents and grandparents wanted. They're tired of all of that. They're tired of all of that. And so I feel pretty good today. Michael, I hear that we're going to be together again because I believe that Kamala Harris is now supposed to announce her concession at 2:30 p.m., I guess. It was going late, and I was getting angry at her. Because, what are we waiting for at this point? If this were Donald Trump and he had not yet admitted that he had lost the election and it was, 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time on a night when he clearly had lost the election, they'd already be losing their minds.
I think they're looking for 20 million more votes somewhere, but it's hard to dig up 20 million more votes. Well, I'm very excited. I look forward to that 2:30 p.m. Maybe then we'll be able to take a nap or something like that. But even in the meantime, we can enjoy the vindication of the character of the American people. The American people proved last night we are garbage. The majority of Americans are garbage, beautiful, fragrant, effective garbage. And I'm so happy about it.
Well, I've always known you had that garbage in you, Michael. Alrighty, folks. You saw it here. Donald Trump pulled off the greatest comeback in the history of politics, sealing him as the 47th president of the United States of America. There has never been a better time to join us as we fight the left and build the future. Join us right now at dailywire.com/subscribe with code Trump for 47% off. Hey, what other code would we use? So I'm going to start today's show by just saying, Baruch Hashem. Okay, for those who don't speak Hebrew, that just means thank God. Blessed is God. Because truly, thank you, God. Seriously, thank you, God. The country is going to be way better off. The world is going to be way better off. And see, here's the thing. God spared Donald Trump's life during this election cycle. Now, look, I know a lot of our listeners may not be big on the God. They may not believe in God, but I have to say, it sometimes is pretty damn difficult not to see his hand moving in history. And God's hand was clearly on Donald Trump when Donald Trump turned his head 20 degrees and avoided having his brains blown out live on national television. And here's the thing. God spared Donald Trump's life for a reason. I don't know God's reasons. You don't know God's reasons. But he's making his hand pretty damned apparent to anyone who is willing to watch. Now, listen, I'll admit it. I've questioned some of God's writing decisions on this particular season of Trump. We had not one but two assassination attempts. The feeble and elderly president actually going like brain dead live on national TV. The replacement candidate being a professional 5-star word salad chef. Her picking not the popular Democratic governor of a swing state, but a nut job who has a clear physical relationship with Gumby. Tony Hinchcliffe eating the dogs, Peanut. Seriously, God, what's going on with the writing this season? It's like the last season of Game of Thrones. But boy, oh boy, can God stick the landing. Season finale of Trump Season 8, unbelievable. So good, 10 out of 10, would watch again, will download for the plane. Best season of Trump ever. But I actually want to talk seriously about the meaning of this election. And let's begin with the man who won this election and is the 47th president of the United States, Donald John Trump. Last night on the air, I got into an interesting discussion with Skeletor impersonator Andrew Klavan. The conversation was about Trump and what made him different from other Republicans. Donald Trump, as I pointed out, has actually run this race as a moderate Republican. Positionally, he's been to the left of Mitt Romney on a wide variety of issues. So it wasn't that Trump is super different in terms of policy. He's not some sort of throwback to a rock-ribbed conservatism. That's not actually what happened here. What makes Donald Trump different is that he, as a human, was built for this moment. Now, there have been a lot of biblical comparisons for President Trump. Many people point out that King David had some pretty serious personal flaws, but he was beloved of God. He also happened to write Psalms. But I have a biblical comparison I think is better. Noah. So in the book of Genesis, the flood is coming, and God finds a man who can build an ark. A man who is, as God puts it in the Bible, Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya Bedorotav. So again, a little Hebrew lingo for you there. That means a righteous man, complete in his generation, like full in his generation. Now, commentators on the Bible argue over what this means. If you say that he was good and if he was full in his generation, does that mean he was especially good because he was in a bad generation? Or is it the other thing? What many commentators say, that Noah, in any other generation, would have been a normie. He'd just been a normal person. But in this generation, he was built for his time. It was a bad generation, and he was a complete man, a man in full for his time. That's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is built for this time. Donald Trump has absorbed more punishment than any politician in modern history. No exaggeration, not close. Twice impeached, 4 times indicted, fined tens of millions of dollars for nonsense, almost shot in the head, then almost shot in the head again. And listen, we all know what the iconic image of Donald Trump is, the one that's going to go down in the history books. It is not going to be him at McDonald's, as awesome as that was, or him driving the garbage truck, as hilarious as that was, or the mugshot, or even him coming down the golden escalator. It is this particular photo. I want you to look at this particular photo. This photo is everything. This is why Donald Trump is the most important man of our age. Because what this photo is courage in the face of danger. It is defiance in the face of assault. It is the American flag floating in the background. Cheesy, unironic, patriotic symbol of the world's most kick-ass country. That's Donald Trump. He's Ish Tamim Bedorotav. He was built for this time. He was built for a time when America has to stare down its enemies abroad and tell them that, as Trump once said to me, we might have to bomb out of them. But also a time when hard-nosed business negotiations can yield international peace, which is what happened last time. He was built for a time when America has to choose between a future of economic dynamism and innovation or one of stagnation and decline. He was built for a time in which America had to choose between the power of treating each other as individuals, and I got to tell you, I've seen Donald Trump do it. No one treats people as individuals more than Donald Trump. Really, truly, no one on earth. Or treating people as members of oppressor or oppressed classes. Yes, Donald Trump has tons of flaws, tons of them. So did Noah. Check out the chapters that happened right after the flood. Gets a little weird, but when the flood is coming, you need a man who bucks the strictures of a corrupt generation and builds the boat. And Donald Trump builds the boat. America is not only going to survive the storms, America is going to rebuild once the waters recede. And the waters are now, thank you God, beginning to recede. These times, this generation requires a middle finger. Donald Trump is and always was that middle finger. Donald Trump has compared himself to a lot of different presidents, Washington and Jackson and Lincoln and McKinley. The man he actually most represents is another New Yorker, a garrulous, self-confident, bordering on pompous, audacious president, Teddy Roosevelt. It was TR who said this in 1910, quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." That's Donald Trump. Now, let's flip the coin. Let's turn to the person who lost this race, Kamala Harris. Here's the thing about Kamala Harris. Nothing. Literally nothing. She was not Joy. She was not Brett. She was not a good candidate. She was not intelligent. She was not articulate. She was nothing. She has always been nothing. She has never won a single vote in her entire career outside the blue state of California. She has never truly been subjected to the rigors of a serious public examination. She is just a hologram. She's a creation of a party machinery. She's an empty vessel. And here's the thing, that was totally apparent every single time she opened her mouth. No amount of celebrity glitter could cover up that innate emptiness, which means that Kamala Harris losing isn't about Kamala. And no, it's not really about Joe Biden either, that corpse in the Oval Office. It's about the entire corrupt machine to which Donald Trump and the American people just threw out a double-barreled FU. So let's talk about that machine for a moment. That machine says that Rude America is inherently racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic. That cities burning is just part of the bargain of coming to grips with our own innate evil. As Tim Walz and his wife said, that smelling the tires is just part of being an American. That what America needs is an intifada revolution. That the story of America is one of a corrupt and evil nation requiring the harsh hand of liberal elites at the top of government to correct them into the harness of equity. This machine that says that American innovation is bad, it's a problem because it's exploitative, and that the job of the government is to create equality of outcome, to relieve people of the burden of responsibility and virtue, and instead hand out some government checks. That families are little torture chambers filled with nasty, hackneyed values, and that churches are repositories of cruelty rather than community. That every human being is basically, in the end, just a set of free-floating feelings, and it's the job of a cloistered elite to legitimize those feelings such that boys can even be girls through the grace of government, and your kids have to be taught that. The machine that says that American power on the world stage is somehow bad for the world, and that our enemies basically have it right. The machine that touts the virtue of spoiled brats on college campuses who shout about the evils of America while tweeting from their iPhones. The machine that manufactures narratives that are lies, overtly false, through the most powerful media mechanisms in human history, and then, unsatisfied when you won't listen to them, tries to crack down on those who disagree. The machine that lies to you and lies to you and lies to you about the economy, about foreign policy, about Joe Biden, about Kamala Harris, about social policy, about America, about the nature of reality itself. Because if you'll buy the lie, then maybe you'll go along with the program. That was the machine that lost last night. That machine is ugly, it is hideous, and it deserves to die. And last night, that machine died. That's what election 2024 was about in the end. It was about a return to, wait for it, normalcy. You feel more normal this morning. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I did a debate with Sam Harris about Trump versus Kamala. And Sam kept saying over and over and over that Donald Trump wasn't normal, and somehow Kamala was. And I'm sure Sam meant it. What he meant by that is that Trump says weird things and exaggerates and bloviates and BSs. But what I said to Sam was this. When people say they want a return to normality, they don't mean politics as usual, because for most people in this era, politics as usual is snafu, situation normal, all effed up. What Americans are looking for is actual, true normalcy. They want to take care of their families. They want to build wealth. They want to go to church. They want to get along with their fellow Americans, and they want to dream of big things together. You know what they like? They like football, and they like marriage, and they like kids, and they like Elon Musk's rockets, and they like truckers, and they like church bake-offs. They want normal. And they've been put in the midst of a flood generation where nothing is normal, where corruption fills the earth. The only thing that has come to seem normal is that when the water levels rise slowly enough, it feels as though you've always been in water up to your neck. But that's not normal. We want normal. This election was the revenge of normal. Donald Trump is the instrument of that revenge. So is J.D. Vance. So are Elon and Joe Rogan. And yes, we here at the Daily Wire, we want normal because normal is the American dream. And sometimes, you know what it takes? A man with a golden escalator and a wild hairdo and a cartoonish speaking cadence and more personal courage and toughness. And yes, patriotism. I know, patriotism. Yes, the American flag. Yes, apple pie. Yes, motherhood. Than any of his enemies to make normal, to make America great again. In just 1 second, we're going to break down how everything went in this election because boy, oh boy. First, speaking of reality, natural disasters are indeed a reality. From the Maui fires to Hurricane Helene and Milton, we're seeing catastrophic disasters take out entire towns with minimal warning, resulting in lack of basic resources. I get it. We're wired to think it won't happen here. And then, unfortunately, in a blink, you can be in survival mode. Being prepared in advance is your best defense against the unexpected. The wellness company's emergency kits completely remove the gatekeeper and subside panic by providing you with a personalized mini pharmacy in the convenience of your own home. Bacterial infections, staph, bite wounds, UTIs, strep throat, respiratory illnesses. You no longer have to be at the mercy of somebody else to help you. You keep a fire extinguisher handy in case of a fire, right? Well, it's probably a good idea to have some basic medicines handy in the event you need them. Same mindset, different product. Getting an emergency kit is fully digital, all from the convenience of your couch. You fill out an intake form, a pharmacist reviews and approves it. Then you receive the kits in 2 weeks. The medical board approved guidebook tells you exactly what to do. This is preparedness simplified. Invest in your family's self-managed insurance plan. Head on over to urgentcarekit.com/Ben. Use promo code Ben. Save $60 plus get free shipping. USA residents only. That's urgentcarekit.com/Ben. Save $60. urgentcarekit.com/Ben. Also, let's talk about something that actually works. Efficient business finance management. You want to know how to run your company's finances smoother than a well-oiled machine? You need to check out our friends over at Ramp. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and money and put it back in your pocket. Ramp gives your finance team unprecedented control over company spending. You can issue cards to every employee with actual limits and restrictions, a novel concept in today's world of runaway expenses. Ramp's accounting software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time. No more chasing down receipts. Your employees won't waste hours on expense reports, allowing you to close your books 8 times faster. Unlike most so-called money-saving solutions, Ramp actually puts cash back in your pocket. Businesses using Ramp save an average of 5% in their very first year. Plus, it's easier to set up than my son's Lego sets. You can get started, issue virtual and physical cards, start making payments in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. Now, get $250 when you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Shapiro. That's ramp.com/Shapiro, ramp.com/Shapiro. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Terms and conditions do apply. So, let's talk first about the data. So, here is the election map as it currently stands. The election map as it currently stands, as you can see, this election map does not show Arizona or Nevada in Trump's category, but Trump has those locked up. It also does not show Michigan in Trump's category. Trump has that locked up as well. Okay, which means that Donald Trump wins the election, and it is not a particularly close election in the end by the Electoral College vote. He's also going to win the popular vote. So yesterday, not to tout my own clairvoyance, but my map looks exactly like the actual map, except I went a little further and said he wins New Hampshire. He didn't win New Hampshire. He won everything else I said he was going to win. He is going to finish up this election cycle with 312 electoral votes compared to Democrats' 226. But that's not actually the chart of the evening. The chart of the evening is this one, courtesy of the New York Times. Okay, this is what they call their red shift map. Okay, the red shift map from the New York Times is the most stunning electoral map that I have seen in any election in recent memory. Look at this map. Okay, the red arrow means counties in which it went more Republican than in 2020 versus counties where it went more Democrat than in 2020. Do you see this? The entire country went more red. The entire country. This was a radical rebuke of Biden-Harris. It was a radical rebuke of the Democratic Party, a brutal, radical rebuke. And it's in every single category. And the New York Times breaks it down by county type. Urban counties, okay, Trump, urban areas, those counties. Trump shifted toward Trump by 5.2 points. Suburban shifted toward Trump, 4.3 points. Less than 50% white shifted toward Trump by 6.9 points. Over 25% Hispanic shift to Trump by almost 10 points. Okay, Hispanics are they are the big story of the election, just if we're talking demographically. We're going to look at the exit polls in just a moment. They are shocking. Large population, young, age 18 to 34, shifts to Trump, 5.6 points. Large age 65 plus population shifts toward Trump, 4.9 points. You cannot find a single area in 2020 that Joe Biden won where she did better than he did. She underperformed Joe Biden radically. Not a little, radically. Okay, meanwhile, if you take a look at the exit polling, I'm looking at the exit polling right now. The exit polling here is astounding, truly astounding. Okay, so the exit polling, this is from NBC News. The breakdown of the key states. Okay, this is across the key states. And not nationally, this is just the key states. It's an aggregation of the swing states. Across it includes Ohio, it includes Texas. Okay, so here is the breakdown. Men, 54-44 Trump. Women, 54-44 Kamala. So an absolutely even gender split. White voters, 55-43 for Trump. Black voters, 86-12 for Kamala Harris. That's not a good number for her. She needed to be well up into the 90s. What happened? Well, as we'll see in a moment, the answer was black men happened to her. Hispanic Latino, and this one just boggles the minds. It boggles the minds. You know why? Because again, Democrats think of people as members of ethnic groups. They do not think of them as individuals with hopes, dreams, and aspirations. I spent a couple nights right before the election. I was with Ted Cruz in the Rio Grande Valley, totally Hispanic area of the country. Okay, and those people, you know what they wanted? A closed border. You know what they wanted? They wanted opportunity, a pathway to make wealth. You know what they wanted? For their churches to be left alone. During this election cycle, I traveled all over the damn place. I went to Ohio with Bernie Moreno. I went to Texas with Ted Cruz. I went to Wisconsin with Eric Hovde. I went to Pennsylvania with Dave McCormick. I went to Nevada with Sam Brown. I was all over the place. Like truly all over the place. And you know what I found? What I found is that Americans of all creeds, ethnicities, colors, you know what they wanted? The same things, the American dream. That's what they wanted. When I went to Northern Ohio, super white Northern Ohio with Bernie Moreno, they wanted exactly the same things as super Hispanic Rio Grande Valley when I was campaigning with Ted Cruz. Hispanic Latino vote, 53-45 Kamala Harris. 45% of Latino votes to Donald Trump. Exit polling from Michigan last night showed Donald Trump outright winning Hispanic voters in the state of Michigan, 60-35. Those are insane numbers. They are insane numbers. Why? Because it turns out once again, and for all people who sort of suggest that America is demographically destined for particular shores, that is not true. The American dream can be true in every heart so long as people Americanize. And turns out we have a really good history in this country of Americanizing people who come here legally. We do. Asian Americans went for Kamala Harris 56-38, and other, it's about 3%, 53-43. By the way, for those who are wondering about the Jewish vote is going to clock in around 40% for Donald Trump. That is the biggest number for Jews for Republicans since Ronald Reagan in 1980 after the horrific Carter administration. How about by sex by race? White men, 59-39 for Donald Trump. White women, 52-47 for Donald Trump. Black men, 78-20 for Kamala. 20% of black men in key states voted for Donald Trump. That is a massive ground shift. Latino men, a majority of Latino men voted for Donald Trump. 54-44. Not a little majority, a big majority. 37% of Latino women voted for Donald Trump. How about younger voters? Voters 18 to 29 in the key states, according to NBC News. 42% of them voted for Donald Trump compared to only 55% of them for Kamala Harris. And as for voters in the 65 or over category, they basically split them down the middle. So the idea that the future definitely belongs to Democrats, not seeing a lot of evidence of that at this point. Age by gender. Young men 18 to 29, 49-47 Harris. Dead even, basically. Even women 18 to 29, she won 63% of those women, but 36% voted in favor of Donald Trump. This is the broadest, most diverse coalition Republicans have had in my lifetime. And that is not just because Donald Trump is a unique character, although he certainly is. That is because the Democrats are off their meds, and they've been off their meds for quite a while, and that is perfectly obvious. You want to know how you get a reaction like this? By going off your damned meds. That's how you go. That's how you get this. You get so high on your own Obama-era supply that you cannot connect with the American people anymore. You've just lost it. Now, the Wall Street Journal had a breakdown of some of the biggest points here. Okay, again, when it comes to the Senate races, McCormick is going to prevail over Bob Casey. Eric Hovde is still locked in a super tight battle with Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin. Unclear who wins there. Mike Rogers locked in a super tight battle in Michigan with Elise Slotkin. Bernie Moreno has beaten Sherrod Brown in Ohio. Tim Sheehy has beaten John Tester in Montana. And Sam Brown looks like he's got the advantage against Jackie Rosen in Nevada. That means the Republicans are very, very likely to end the evening with somewhere between 53 and 54 seats. Minimum. Okay, that is a durable Senate majority in this day and age. Okay, it's a sweeping victory for Donald Trump. It's a sweeping victory for the Republican Party. And so now we have to get into the real winners and losers of this election cycle, because there are some big winners and there is some big losers. So, big winners of the election cycle. Obviously, President Trump. When we talk to the top about President Trump, can't say enough about him in terms of his personal durability, in terms of what he is willing to go through, and in terms of his unique appeal to the American body politic. It turns out that being incredibly famous and incredibly popular before you run for president is a real asset. And Donald Trump has a unique thing, which is he is always Donald Trump. Donald Trump is he's not ever not Donald Trump. I've seen Donald Trump in multiple. I've seen him meet hostage families. I've seen him meet donors. I've seen Donald Trump on stage. I've seen him off stage. I've seen him in private meetings. I've seen him in public meetings. Donald Trump is the same everywhere. He is perfectly authentic. And he is authentically the 47th president of the United States. Thank God. Other big winners last night. Got to shout one out to my man, Joe Biden. Slow clap for my boy, Joe Biden. Woo! Joe Biden somewhere. He's walking down a beach in Zihuatanejo to meet up with Donald Trump. Because here's the reality. Ain't nobody in America who wanted Kamala Harris to lose more than Joseph Robinette Biden. He wanted Kamala Harris to go down in flames. He's getting his final dream, Joe Biden, right now. Get to more on that in just one moment. First, Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and creates a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community, change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With 350 academic programs as of June 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others, that's yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. I visited their campus, by the way, a gorgeous campus. I know many people who have gone to GCU. It's a terrific place. Go check it out right now, gcu.edu. Again, that is Grand Canyon University at gcu.edu. Private, Christian, affordable. Also, when we started Daily Wire, the biggest question mark was what we would do with HR. It's something you really don't think about because, you're focused on creating engaging content. It makes it difficult to find a management professional capable of handling the day-to-day HR tasks. If that sounds like you and your business, you need to talk to my friends over at Bambee. With Bambee, you're not just getting a dedicated HR manager. You're getting a dedicated partner who's available by phone, email, real-time chat. They'll handle crucial tasks like employee onboarding, terminations, and performance reviews. With Bambee's HR Autopilot feature, you can streamline essential HR practices like employee training and feedback procedures, freeing up time for what really matters to your business. All of Bambee's HR managers are based in the United States and can support the nuances across all 50 states. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 annually. Bambee starts at just $99 monthly. So no matter the size of your business, Bambee can work for you. Don't wait another minute. Schedule your free consultation. Visit Bambee.com right now. Type Ben Shapiro under podcast when you sign up. Spelled BAMBEE.com, BAMBEE.com, Bambee.com. Type in Ben Shapiro. Okay, so back to our winners and losers. Big winner number one, obviously President Trump. Big winner number two, Joe Biden. That dude had himself the best evening last night because here's your story if you're Joe Biden. You're the only person who's ever beat Donald Trump. You are. You beat Donald Trump in 2020. And then they said you needed to leave. You were too old. You had to go. So they shivved you in the middle of the night and tossed your body off the back of the train. And there you are lying, bleeding, and you're whispering to Barack Obama, she's too flawed. She's going to lose. You should have stuck with Madeline. But it was too late. It was too late. And so if you're Joe Biden, your greatest wish was for Kamala Harris to lose. You wanted her to lose. Now, I'm not saying that purposefully Joe Biden called half Americans garbage just so she'd lose. But it is a little weird. See, the thing is, if Joe Biden is just the guy who is a transitional president to Kamala Harris, then she is the historic first female president. And he's just a white guy between Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. That's how history treats him. But if he's the only person who was able to stand up to the scourge of Donald Trump, and then he was unfairly deposed after his historic presidency by a cabal of backstabbing insurrectionists, then he gets to be a victim the rest of his life. He gets to keep claiming he would have beaten Trump no matter what, even clearly if he would not have. So Joe Biden, big winner last night. So clap, cheers, applause for Joe Biden. Really, really well done. I don't think it was a coincidence that Jill Biden wore a red suit to vote yesterday. Another big winner last night, Elon Musk. Okay, so you know what I think of Elon. I think Elon is great. I think Elon is not only a historic figure, I think he's a world historic figure. His optimism about technology, about the nature of human beings, about the necessity for more human beings, about innovation, about entrepreneurship is awesome. It's just awesome stuff. It's great. And Elon Musk put everything on the line here because The Democrats were already making noises. His head was on the chopping block if Donald Trump lost, and everyone knew it. Rachel Maddow was calling for him to lose all government contracts, despite the fact that he is still running the only truly efficient space program in the world right now. They were talking about going after Starlink. Elon Musk, as a point of principle, he didn't have to do this. He's the richest man on earth. He didn't have to do anything. Put himself out there on behalf of Donald Trump, freed up free speech on X by buying it simply because he was pissed off at a joke that the Babylon Bee was banned for. And then he proceeded to sink millions of his own dollars into a get out the vote effort on behalf of Donald Trump. He wins big. Elon, American hero. Other winners, Joe Rogan. Okay, Joe Rogan, and frankly, my entire alternative media industry. So listen, Joe is the granddaddy of us all when it comes to the podcasting industry. Joe Rogan not only endorsed Donald Trump, him having on Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in the late stages of the campaign, reminded people that these are authentic humans. And it's Kamala Harris's fault that she couldn't go on Joe Rogan. That is totally her fault. You want to know why you couldn't reach over to bros? Kamala, the reason that you couldn't reach out to bros is because it turns out you wouldn't even talk to bros. You don't understand bros. But Joe Rogan does, and he was shamed for this. And he was hit with whips and scourges for the great sin of talking to the bros. And guess what? The bros had their revenge last night. And I like Joe personally. I'm friends with Joe personally. Joe has stood up to a lot of bullcrap over the course of the last 5-10 years. Congratulations to Joe Rogan, who put himself out there when he didn't have to. And congratulations to us as an extension, all of us in the conservative media. Don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but some of us worked pretty damned hard in this election cycle against the Kamala Harris Democratic Party machine. Some of us sank hundreds of thousands of our own dollars into, say, flying across the country to campaign with various Republican Senate candidates, and then spent pretty much every working hour trying to figure out ways to ensure that they would not regain power after Inauguration Day. And so, the alternative media worked. We countered the narrative. We did it. And frankly, you should subscribe because we did that. I mean, you should join us. I know many of you already are. I know you were fighting too. Other winners, the Trump machine. Shout out to Susie Wiles, Chris Lasavita, Charlie Kirk, Don Jr., the whole Trump team. A lot of people were skeptical. Sometimes I was skeptical because, from the outside, sometimes it looks like chaos. When you win, you win. And I got to say, this was a much more disciplined Trump campaign than 2020. Way, way, way more disciplined. And when it comes to people like Scott Presley turning people out, making sure that people actually get to the polls, congrats to all those folks. Okay, now time for our big losers of the evening. So big losers of the evening, obviously Kamala Harris. Man, oh man, was the empty vessel shattered. Kamala Harris was never joy. She was never brat. She was never nothing. She was terrible in her first iteration as progressive senator running for president. She was terrible in her second iteration as vice president. And she was awful in her third iteration as presidential candidate. She is toast. She will not be missed. No one's going to remember her. No one cares about her. People can't wait for her to get out of here fast enough. Joe Biden may have been right. They would have been better off leaving the dead old man in place just to avoid what just happened. Okay, big loser number 2, Barack Obama. Barack Obama has been the shadow government of the Democratic Party since he left office. It's been his people in the Biden administration. It was Barack Obama who backed Joe Biden in the 2020 race. It was Barack Obama who helped pick Kamala Harris for VP in the 2020 race. It was Barack Obama who put his thumb on the scale in favor of Kamala Harris to replace Joe Biden. It was Barack and Michelle Obama who are out campaigning and lecturing black men that they must be a bunch of sexists if they didn't vote for Kamala Harris. And as it turns out, Barack Obama is capable of generating popularity for one person and one person only. His name is Barack Obama. Other than that, Barack Obama, who tore apart the country for his own personal glorification in 2012, in what I thought was the most ugly election of my lifetime, truly, ripping apart a person who is of good character like Mitt Romney, just to gain power, and ripping apart the country in the process. Barack Obama has been chastised by the American people twice by Donald Trump, and he deserves it. No one could more richly deserve it than Barack Obama, who sees at least half the country as bitter clingers who cling to God and guns and xenophobia because they disagree with him up there on Mount Olympus, that jackass. Other losers, the big universities. So you decided you wanted to define policy for an entire political party. How's that working out for you, gang? It turns out that if you let all the moronic college students and administrators at Columbia University dictate your party platform, people don't like it very much. In fact, the only demographic that Kamala Harris did well with were college-educated white women. That was pretty much it. That was like the whole thing. That's the only place where she seemed to overperform. Major education gap. That is not because smarter people voted for Kamala. That is because more indoctrinated people voted for Kamala Harris. People who speak the lingo, who are part of the virtue signaling club. But here is the problem. That does not confer wisdom, as my friend Dennis Prager likes to say. The major universities have been churning out good little apparatchiks for a very long time, good little activists. And the federal government's been subsidizing them. Joe Biden was trying to subsidize them to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. And I'd just like to point out at this point, you followed the universities down that primrose path to hell. You deserve every bit of this Democratic Party. And universities, you know what's coming. You know what's coming under Donald Trump. There ain't going to be no student loan bailout. There are going to be investigations into your violations of the Civil Rights Act. There are going to be investigations into your violations of the Equal Protection Clause. Get ready. It's coming. And there should be. You've been violating them willy-nilly for decades. Finally, the biggest losers of all, our friends over in the legacy media. You schmucks, you. Truly, every narrative you trotted out was a fail. Your credibility is in the toilet. It is irrecoverable. It is broken beyond all recognition. You did it, not us. All we did is we pointed out what you were doing. You did it yourselves. We didn't even have to do it. You did it. You trotted out a narrative that Donald Trump was Hitler, and it was nonsense. It's always been nonsense. You know what Hitler doesn't do? Go for an October 7th event with me to the grave of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson to meet with hostage families. That's not what Hitler does. That is, you know what Hitler doesn't do? Win 45% of the Hispanic vote. That's not something that Hitler tends to do. You schmucks, you. Saying that Joe Biden was perfectly well and anybody who doubted it was engaging in cheap fakes. Then proclaiming that Kamala Harris was brat and joy and that Tim Walz wasn't some weirdo goofball. People saying that J.D. Vance, the most normie higher office candidate since Mitt Romney, is somehow an emissary of bizarreness, while you trot out Sam Brinton, a man who dresses up as a woman and steals luggage, as your example of what American masculinity ought to look like. You idiots. You've destroyed yourselves. And the only thing that you could think to do was not change your direction. The only thing you could think to do was to then try to cudgel social media into doing your bidding. Well, guess what? It ain't going to work. It's over. It's over. Don't get me wrong. The New York Times will still exist. The Washington, these places will continue to exist. They're institutions. But your credibility, gone. Toast. Goodbye. See you later. Irrecoverable unless you change directions, unless you figure it out. In just a second, I'm going to get to Donald Trump's victory speech. And you know what that means? It's beginning around here to smell, actually. Smell like victory. Behold, this here. He smells like victory. The Churchill. We like Winston Churchill here at the Daily Wire. This right here is the Daily Wire Churchill smells like victory candle. Behold. Behold. In the great words of Winston Churchill, victory at all costs, victory in spite of all terror, victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there is no survival. Yes, this candle was my idea. I do love Winston Churchill, and also I love victory. Not tired of winning yet. Not tired of it in the slightest. Lighting a candle, a votive candle for Kamala Harris's hopes and dreams at this point in time. This new candle, which smells like heaven, is available exclusively on the Candle Club with 20% off right now in honor of this historic victory. You see that V right there, the V for victory? Oh yeah. Go to thecandleclub.com to shop my collection today. That does smell delightful. Also, you may have heard, last night some things happened. Donald Trump pulled off the greatest political comeback in history, becoming the 47th president of the United States of America. We told you we'd cover the election from start to finish, and we delivered. Boy, did we deliver. But more importantly, you delivered. You showed up to vote. You did the thing, guys. America, you did the thing. You made your voice heard. You made this victory possible. Listen, we have big battles ahead, but we've proven time and time and time again, just like last night, when we fight, we win. If you're not a member yet, now is the moment. Join the fight. Join us. It's been awesome so far. It's getting even better. It's getting better from here. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code TRUMP for 47% off. Yes, that's right. Code TRUMP for 47% off. 47% off for our 47th President of the United States. Yeah, baby. Yeah, don't miss out. Join us at dailywire.com/subscribe with code TRUMP. Speaking of which, Trump came out very late last night, and he gave his victory speech. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, Central Time. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time is when he actually gave this speech. And it was delightful. It was delightful. I mean, he gets out there, and one of the first things he says is what I've said here today. God spared his life for a reason. That is so, it's just true. It's just true. I'm sorry, you can't watch that video. I said it the day it happened. You can't watch the video of him turn his head this much and the bullet graze his ear and not think, this man's life is being spared for a reason. It just is. Here's Trump saying it.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay, then Donald Trump said he has an unprecedented and powerful mandate. And that is true. This is the first. He's going to win the popular vote, guys. That means he's the first Republican president to win the popular vote and the Electoral College since George W. Bush in 2004, which is now 20 years ago. Here's Donald Trump.
I hope that you're going to be looking back someday and say that was one of the truly important moments of my life when I voted for this group of people beyond the president, this group of great people. America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good.
So good. Okay, Donald Trump then said a couple of things that I particularly loved. And honestly, it was all wonderful. It was all joyous. Last night was just a great night. It was just a great night. So President Trump went out of his way. The crowd started chanting for Elon, which they should, because, again, I'm a fanboy. Elon's awesome. So Trump praises Elon, and he says something that's so important. Like, it's a throwaway line, but it's not a throwaway line at all. Here was Trump praising Elon Musk.
You have something called Starlink, is that right? Yes, I do. What the hell is it? He said, it's a communication system that's very good. I said, Elon, they need it really, really badly in North Carolina. Can you get it? He had that there so fast, it was incredible. And it was great. It saved a lot of lives. He saved a lot of lives. But he's a character. He's a special guy. He's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them. We have to protect our super geniuses.
We have to protect our geniuses. Okay, it's a throwaway funny line. It's not a throwaway funny line. You know who creates innovation? The real innovation? People who are smart. People who innovate. And a country worth its salt does have to protect those people. It does have to incentivize those people. Otherwise, you get what's called a brain drain. Because it turns out smart people can leave. This is what China is currently facing. China has to enforce basically a crackdown on anybody who's smart in the country so they don't just get the hell out. When Trump says we need to incentivize, we need to protect our geniuses, he is right. That is a good thing, an actively good thing. You want a thriving economy? You want innovation for the future? You want better and cooler stuff? Protect your geniuses. Okay, then there was this. So Donald Trump, obviously RFK Jr., signed on to the Trump campaign, and it made some difference because, the margins are big enough in many of these states, but it's not like Trump won by 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania. He's going to end up winning the state by 120, 140,000 votes. So it makes a big difference, but he's talking to RFK, and he likes a lot of RFK's agenda, make America healthy again and all that. But then he drops this, because here's the thing. Trump is practical. Trump likes to win. He does not like to lose. So here he was saying to RFK, don't touch the oil, buddy. Don't touch it. Don't go there.
Bobby, leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so Kamala Harris has yet to concede. Last night, it was obvious she had lost. It was perfectly obvious, right? I had declared in the studio that she had lost about midnight. About midnight, it was perfectly obvious, Central Time, that she had lost the election because Pennsylvania was trending away from her, Michigan was trending away from her, Wisconsin was trending away from her. There was no real path. It was over. Well, it got to about 2:30 in the morning, and she still had not conceded. In fact, as we are speaking right now, she still has not actually conceded the race officially. Cedric Richmond, her co-chair, actually got out there last night and told everybody to go home.
We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the vice president tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation.
Okay, so she sends out Cedric Richmond. She runs away. She's deep in the wine by now, obviously. I would just like you to imagine the media hysteria if the same situation were reversed. If she had won and Trump at almost noon the next day Eastern time still had not called to concede. Apparently she's expected to speak at 4 p.m. Eastern and will call Trump right before that to concede. But pretty amazing, amazing stuff, obviously. Okay, well, now we get to the most pleasurable part of this for those of us who like Schadenfreude, the tears. So all night we were having trouble with the plumbing in this office because the amount of water, it was basically flooded. Just the sheer quantity of leftist tears that were just randomly overflowing. I mean, we have lots of these hanging around our offices, like hundreds or thousands of them hanging around here. And like every single one of them was magically pouring forth extraordinary quantities of tears, of leftist tears. And boy, the tears are coming. They are coming fast. So our friend Cenk Uygur over at Young Turks, he led off the evening with a typically well-calibrated emotional response.
They're lying to you. Why do you think they keep losing? Do you think they keep telling you how smart they are and how they're going to deliver you victories? And all they ever do is deliver loss after loss after loss. So Democratic voters, snap out of it. These guys are obvious liars. Fire them all. Fire them all. And if you don't, okay, then keep losing to buffoons, to obvious con men like Donald Trump. Keep losing and losing and losing and never figuring it out. Here, I solved it for you. I figured it out. It's the goddamn corruption. All the stupid donor money, all it's ever done is lead to more losses. So if you don't fire them, you have no one to blame but yourself.
I mean, at least Cenk is delivering his ire at the right target, the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, the full-scale TikTok meltdowns are upon us. Here is just one Kamala supporter having a full-scale mental breakdown.
We may not have rights tomorrow, so I'm going to bed with the last bit of dignity that I have left. But we fought a good fight, and if it turns out that, shit flips, great, hell yeah, but right now I'm just not. I can't deal with this right now.
Her life is not going to change one iota. Just going to point that out. It's actually just going to get better because she'll have a better economy and no wars. Here's another one. We have plenty where that came from. Again, the tears are just, they overfloweth. Here's some more crying from Kamala supporters. A lot of tears.
All right, guys, it's time to go to bed. None of us are stressed about the election, right? We all are gonna just go have the best night's sleep of our lives, aren't we?
Would you like some more? Because I have more. Go for it, guys. More.
I hate to be the person that gets on here and cries, but this could break me and my parents apart because they just don't understand what they voted for and what it means and the bigotry and hatred that they stand behind and how I am trying to be a good person. I'm not Catholic like they are, which is ironic because it's religion's supposed to make you love. But I could see it breaking me and my parents apart because they just don't get it and they don't get that they voted for.
So maybe we can. I don't need more of her. I don't need more of her suffering. Okay, because I'm too kind-hearted. But I will say, maybe her parents are the correct ones. I know this is something that actually young people should think about. What if your parents are right? What if they are? It turns out kibbud av ve'em, like respect for your father and mother in the Bible, one of the 10 commandments that we've forgotten about. We've got many of them. That's a big one. What if that one happens to be mostly right? Just going to put that one out there. Meanwhile, in the more mainstream legacy media, we have broken into just a few different categories. We've got full-scale full-scale denial. Full-scale denial. So Mika Brzezinski was in full-scale denial last night. She says that not only did Kamala Harris run a solid campaign, she ran the best campaign. She still is Brad and Joy. She is Brad and Joy. Now, people asked me last night on the broadcast, what were Democrats going to do? What were the media going to do? Who are they going to blame? In 2016, they blamed the Russians and Facebook, and they blamed Trump for being a Russian cat's paw or something. So who are they going to blame this time? And I said, they're going to blame America. That's where this is going. Get ready for it, because that's the corollary. If Kamala is the best you got and you still lose, maybe it's because you're wrong and you hate a lot of Americans. Here's Mika Brzezinski saying that Kamala is brat, joy, wonder.
I just want to say a word about Kamala Harris, the vice president, because she really put herself out there over the past few months at great risk and peril to herself and her family. She was thrown into the deep end of the pool politically and hit all her marks and then some, and showed up for America, pushing back against negative forces from all sides and from those you couldn't even see, the ones we were just talking about. It's really difficult to describe what she did, what she tried to do, and the history that she did make. I'm very grateful for, and perhaps we will learn from it. So I'm very grateful for the effort, and I think we'll be asking a lot of questions about ourselves and about the nature of how this all played out.
But just remember, she was wonderful. Joy Reid, who is so filled with joy. I mean, it runs off of her in waves, the joy from Joy Reid. So well named. She says that Kamala she just ran a flawless campaign, like a beautiful, bright diamond, completely flawless, top grade.
Nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift. She had the Swifties. She had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true.
Just so magical, so magical. So first it was denial. But the corollary of the denial, if she's so great, why did she lose? And that brings us to the actual place Democrats are likely to land. And this is political suicide, what they're about to do. They're engaging. We need a wellness check on the Democrats. What they are doing right now is political suicide. They're going to blame Americans. They're going to say the problem was not our candidate. The problem was not our machine. The problem is that Americans suck. So Jill Filipovich, who writes about women's rights, U.S. politics, and foreign affairs, quote, in the coming days, there's going to be a lot of opining about what the Harris campaign did wrong. But this election was not an indictment of Kamala Harris. It was an indictment of America. You garbage. You did this. You garbage people with your garbage. Or how about Nicole Hannah-Jones, one of the most privileged beneficiaries of the American system, given the fact that she has no actual skill set and lies for a living, and yet has been made rich and famous by those things. She put out an entire tweet thread. I won't read the whole thing because she's a terrible writer and a liar. But she says, quote, we must not delude ourselves in this moment. Multiracial democracy in the United States is less than 60 years old. It has always been contested, often violently so. It has always been fragile. Since this nation's inception, large swaths of white Americans, including white women, have claimed belief in democracy while actually enforcing a white ethnocracy. In the face of shifting demographics, where white Americans will lose their numeric majority, we see a growing embrace of autocracy to keep the legitimate rulers of this country in power. History teaches us that we are in a fragile moment. So I'm just going to point out right now that Donald Trump won 45% of the Hispanic vote and 20% of the black male vote and has the most multiracial, multi-ethnic Republican coalition in modern American history. But it doesn't matter because they're just going to keep doubling down on this. Americans, you suck. You're bad. This is their program. Martina Navratilova, the tennis player, quote, well, Trump won. Fear and anger won. A country that was born as a racist patriarchy proved beyond any reasonable doubt it is still a racist patriarchy, says the incredibly rich and famous lesbian female tennis player. But we have to return to our friend Joy Reid and all of her joy. Here she is blaming Americans. You knew it was coming. I did anyway, because I'm good at this.
You know, if they didn't make their numbers and essentially exceed the numbers that Joe Biden had in the suburbs, and I think we have to be blunt about why. Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state.
Okay, but that's not true. That's not actually true. Black voters showed up in lower numbers for Kamala Harris. She actually underperformed Joe Biden with black voters. So, yeah, that's not true. But again, remember, it's you white Americans, it's you. How about Jonathan Capehart over at the Washington Post and MSNBC? He says, I just want to know, have Americans given up on democracy? I love this kind of talk. It's like sweet music to my ears. Donald Trump wins the popular vote in the Electoral College. And they're like, maybe the Americans gave up on democracy. They just voted, just not for you. What happened last night was democracy, you dumbass. Here we go.
I can't help but wonder if the American people have given up on democracy simply because of what he's told us, what he wants to do, simply because of what the Supreme Court decided in terms of immunity. I mean, he has said he wants to go after his political enemies.
These people, but keep doing it. You know what? Keep doing it. Please, more. Keep doing it. I want them to run this campaign until the end of time. Please, keep doing this. Keep doing this until the American people get tired of clocking you in the head. Because that's what happened last night. How about David Axelrod? Why did she lose? Wait for it. It's because all you Americans, particularly you black men, as well as you Hispanics, racist. Here's David Axelrod, white dude, telling you about how all you diverse peoples who voted for Donald Trump, all you Jews, all you Hispanics, all you black people, just a little, all you white women who voted in favor of Donald Trump, a little bit sexist too. Let this white man tell you. Let him mansplain this one to you. Here we go.
Let's be honest about this, okay? Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country. And anybody who thinks that that did not in any way impact on the outcome of this race is wrong.
Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep it up. Do it. Al Sharpton, a man who is one of the worst racial conflagrationists in modern American history. Who's he blaming? He's blaming black and Hispanic men. Do it, man. Keep it up. Keep it up. Blame the American people. Do it. Do it.
What do you think pushed that, especially with the Hispanic voters going for Donald Trump as much as they did? Because that made a big difference.
I think that a lot of it was he was able to sell a lot of Hispanic voters that immigration was a threat to them, that some of the people coming across the border was a threat to them. I think that we've got to be honest, among Hispanic men and black men, there's a lot of misogyny. And I think that we've got to deal with the reality that he appealed to this whole false macho thing that some black men and some Latino men went for.
So, yeah, Al Sharpton, you, black and Hispanic men, you misogynist. John King doing the same thing on CNN. I can do this all day because this is the whole thing. It's you bad Americans, you. And then finally, it's just bitterness and panic. That's the other reaction, just bitterness and panic. Here's a headline from the New York Times. Trump storms back. Now, I kind of like it, but if it were Kamala Harris, it would be Kamala Harris elected in historic American moment. Kamala Harris, historic moment. So heroic. A new age dawns. Donald Trump. It's Trump storms back. New York Times headline. His win opens an era of uncertainty. Opens an era of uncertainty? Where you been, New York Times? New York Times, America hires a strong man. Are we talking about the same Donald Trump, the one who deregulated that one? Are we talking about the one who didn't have foreign wars and the one who was not cracking down on social media and the one who was not prosecuting his political opponents? That guy? Is that's the one we're talking about, right? But here are Joe Scarborough and Jonathan Lemire over at MSNBC in full-scale meltdown panic mode.
What explains it to you?
Well, I think.
Would you like me to say it?
I think
or do you want to say it. Well, if she were a 6'4" white man from Arkansas or from Florida, and she ran a good middle-of-the-road campaign talking about reaching out. Do you think she would be losing by that much? If she could like chew tobacco and carry a shotgun and talk about football and be a guy's guy, I mean, you tell me.
What happened here? What happened? Jen Psaki, former White House press secretary for Joe Biden, she ripped into Trump as well.
For so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest. I understand that personally. After he lost 4 years ago, he refused to accept the outcome and incited a violent insurrection on our nation's capital. He's campaigned while facing criminal indictments related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 results, and he's run as a convicted felon. During this campaign, he has also promised to essentially be an authoritarian leader, to use power like no American president ever has before, and wield that power to go after his political enemies. This is a man who's also bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade and stripping away women's bodily autonomy. He's promised to conduct mass deportations to crack down on the rights of millions of Americans.
Propagandists, cry harder, do it. So what actually is Donald Trump going to do? Well, I mean, the market spiked this morning, so there was that. Like the market's open, the market spiked, and that is because, of course, everybody knows the economy is going to be way better under Donald Trump. In fact, the markets jumped from the Dow Jones Industrial, jumped from an open at 42,850 all the way up to 43,475. So it went like 600, 700 point jump right at market open. So, you know, not bad. It turns out people kind of optimistic about a Donald Trump presidency. Can't imagine why. Maybe it's all the deregulation and tax cuts that are on their way. Maybe it's the fact that actually Donald Trump knows kind of how to run a business and a bunch of people around him have run businesses. Maybe it's that. Or maybe it's the fact that Donald Trump's actually going to reinstate all of his border policies. Remain in Mexico, going to go right back in place. We are going to get a revision of the asylum rules. So you actually have to show evidence that you are here claiming asylum before you are simply allowed into the country. There'll be a lot of stuff that changes on the border. Maybe it's that foreign policy is going to get a lot more solid, that he's going to appoint a bunch of fantastic people to his foreign policy team. I mean, I can tell you this. Obviously, as you all know, I've got a lot of friends in Israel with all the being Jewish and all. People over there are just as ecstatic, if not more so, than most of the Republicans that I know in the United States. Donald Trump's favorability ratings in the state of Israel are like 85%, like super duper high. Bibi Netanyahu, for his part, called him up even before news outlets began to call the election in his favor. And in an English language statement, he said, "Congratulations on history's greatest comeback. Your historic return to the White House offers a new beginning for America and a powerful recommitment to the great alliance between Israel and America. This is a huge victory." And he is not wrong. By the way, for the record, Vladimir Zelensky called up to congratulate Trump. He also put out a statement, quote, "Congratulations to Donald Trump on his impressive election victory. I recall our great meeting with President Trump back in September when we discussed in detail the Ukraine-U.S. strategic partnership, the victory plan, and ways to put an end to Russian aggression against Ukraine." And he said he admires Trump's commitment to peace through strength. The world's about to get a lot quieter, because guess what? People are scared of Donald Trump, and they should be. The Supreme Court. It is worth remembering at this point that Justice John Roberts is 69 years old, that Clarence Thomas is 76 years old, that Samuel Alito is 74 years old. Before Donald Trump leaves office, he will be appointing justices who are much younger to take those slots, and a whole slate of conservative justices across the country. Young conservative judges across all of these places. Deregulation is coming. Things are going to get better. Your life is going to get better. So here's the question for Democrats. Where do they go next? Where do Democrats go next? Well, I have some bad news for where Democrats go next. I want to show you a map. This should scare the living daylights out of Democrats. So if you don't like how the Electoral College is going for you right now, wait a couple of years. You remember that I pointed out earlier this week that if the census had been done correctly in 2020, then a bunch of red states that are not in the Rust Belt would have actually picked up a bunch of Electoral College votes. Right? They picked up a bunch of electoral votes. Well, here is what the 2030 apportionment forecast looks like according to the American Redistricting Project. Okay, this is by 2030. Okay, if I'm reading my map correctly, what you are looking at is 3 electoral votes added in the great state of Florida. You are looking at 1 electoral vote added in the state of Georgia, 1 added in Tennessee, 1 added in North Carolina. That's 6 in deep red states. Move on over to Texas. 4 added in Texas. That is now 10 in deep red states. Move over to Arizona. That's 11. Move on up to Idaho. That's 12. That's 12 electoral votes added in deep red states. Deep red states. And where is the loss coming from? Predominantly, it's coming from the Northeast. It's coming from Illinois. It's coming from California, which is going to lose 4 electoral votes. Those are bad. That's some bad news. That's some bad news happening right there. Okay, so if you don't like the map now, wait until Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan all keep turning red the way that Ohio did. And people keep leaving blue areas for red areas because it turns out red states are better to live in than blue states. So if you're the Democrats, prepare for pain. Alrighty, folks, in just a second, I want to get to what Democrats do next because they are in a state of bewilderment. If you're not a member, however, you're not going to see it. You have to become a member. Join us. It's been an amazing ride, and it's only getting better from here. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.